Chapter 806. Tears flowed uncontrollably from Chanyang Zuyun's eyes. She sobbed, Kong, where are you? Don't you know how much I miss you? Chanyang Zuyun's voice was filled with deep sorrow. Chanyang Zuyun Kong was her only son, who knew how many tears she had shed over the years for him. Her strength had even stagnated because of this. She had remained at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler for several hundred years, unable to break through. This was because her son had already become a mental puzzle for her. If she could not solve this puzzle, she would never be able to break through to the level of Holy Emperor. She would only be able to live for 3,000 years at most. Chanyang Zuyun Xiao arrived beside Chanyang Zuyun. His heart was just as heavy. He could not help but sigh inside when he saw how sad his wife was. He comforted her. Don't be too sad. I believe that we'll find Kong one day. Didn't Kong establish a Chanyang prefecture here? He'll return sooner or later. Senior Chanyang Zuyun Xiao, is Jianqin also a part of your Chanyang prefecture? At this moment, a powerful voice rang out from above. The president of the union stared at Chanyang Zuyun Xiao and his wife. The light in his eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. Jianqin? Chanyang Zuyun Xiao softly murmured. A sliver of doubt appeared in his eyes. He had not participated in the meeting of elders in Chanyang Prefecture, so he obviously did not know about Jianqin. Old man, Jianqin's real name is Chanyang Shoten. He's the 4th young master of our Chanyang Prefecture. He's an unprecedented genius on the Tianyuan continent. He's 24 this year and is already a hermit saint ruler, Chang Wuji explained from one side. A gleam of light flashed through Chanyang Zuyunxiao's eyes when he heard that. A sliver of disbelief appeared on his face as he softly cried out, How is it possible to become a saint ruler at 24? Changbo's words had indeed shocked Chanyang Zuyunxiao. Becoming a saint ruler at such a young age was not something that could be described as terrifying. It was definitely unprecedented on the Tianyuan continent. The president continued, Senior Chanyang Zuyunxiao, Jianqin has taken away the saint artifact of our union that has existed for countless years. We've only come to take it back. We have no other intentions. We hope that Jianqin can return the saint artifact once he returns. The president paused when he reached there. After a moment of hesitation, he continued, And according to what I know, the ancient divine beast, the winged tiger, is also by Jianqin's side. Chanyang Zuyunxiao could no longer remain composed when he heard that. He immediately cried out in surprise, What? The ancient divine beast, the winged tiger, is by Jianqin's side? However, a sliver of joy immediately filled his face. Jianqin was a member of the Chanyang Prefecture. Since the ancient divine beast was by Jianqin's side, did that not mean that the winged tiger was under the control of the Chanyang Prefecture? This was great news for the Chanyang Prefecture. Chanyang Zuyun suppressed her pain as well. Shock filled her face. The ancient divine beast that the 10 protector clans had mobilized the entire continent to search for was actually by the side of a disciple of the Chanyang Prefecture. This was no small matter. The senior members and guards of the Chanyang Prefecture were stunned by this piece of news as well. The news of the ancient divine beast, the winged tiger, had spread like wildfire across the entire kingdom of Jessen. Everyone was searching for the winged tiger, but they had never thought that the winged tiger would actually be by the side of the 4th young master, Chanyang Shoten. Suddenly, the space above the Chanyang clan began to violently pulse. A multicolored space gate formed at an extremely fast speed as figures shot out one after another. In the blink of an eye, several dozen people in the same uniform appeared above the Chanyang Prefecture. Although they did not radiate with any presences, they were able to hover in the air without using the energy of the world. They were clearly saint rulers. A gleam of light flashed through Chanyang Zuyunxiao's eyes. He slowly glanced past the several dozen people and finally became stern. He said with a deep voice, I never thought that the people of your Yangji zone would actually come here. With Chanyang Zhu Yunxiao's status, he understood every single protector clan extremely well. He could tell with a single glance that the Yangji zone had basically turned out in full force this time. Aside from the invasion of the Beast God continent, the only reason why the Yangji zone had mobilized so many people was because of the winged tiger. I never thought that one of the 7 great elders of the Chanyang prefecture, Chanyang Zuyin Shao, would be here as well. It's a pleasure to meet you. A ruddy old man from the Yangji zone calmly looked at Chanyang Zuyin Shao and smiled faintly. He was one of the great elders of the Yangji zone. His name was Chanyangzi, and he was the most authoritative and powerful person in the Yangji zone. A burly, middle-aged man stood beside Chanyangzi. The middle-aged man stared at Chanyang Zuyin Shao emotionlessly and said, "Chanyang Zuyin Shao, have you come for the winged tiger as well?" At this moment, Chanyang Zuyin Shao completely believed the president's words. The winged tiger really was following a disciple of the Chanyang prefecture. After a moment of thought, Chanyang Zuyin Shao said, "This is a branch of our Chanyang prefecture. Fellow Yangji zone, I hope you won't interfere with the matters of our Chanyang prefecture." We obviously won't interfere with the matters of your Chanyang prefecture. We've come this time mainly to capture a person called Jianqin, also known as Chanyang Shoten. This person has destroyed a branch of our Yangji zone, so he cannot be forgiven. Otherwise, where will the dignity of our Yangji zone remain? Chen Yangzi smiled. Chanyang Zhu Yunxiao's face sank. He said, "Chanyang Shoten is a member of our Chanyang prefecture. Yangji zone has no right to capture him." "Brother Yunxiao, you jest. Your Chanyang prefecture only has the Zhu, Yuan, and Qing branches. You don't have the Xiang branch. So how can this Chanyang Shoten be a member of your Chanyang prefecture? And Chanyang prefecture doesn't have anyone with the surname Zhu, Yuan, or Qing either. How can he be a member of your protector clan, Chanyang prefecture? It's probably just someone with the same name." Yangzi continued to smile as he secretly used a secret technique to search for Jianqin's presence. However, after searching the entire kingdom of Jessen, he actually failed to sense any other saint rulers' presences aside from the saint rulers gathered in Chanyang prefecture. Don't tell me Jianqin isn't here, or he's used an extremely great method to hide his presence. Otherwise, how would he have escaped my search? Chen Yangzi thought. He waved his hand and said, "Bring all of Jianqin's relatives back to the sect. There needs to be an explanation for the destruction of a branch of our Yangji zone. I'd like to see who dares to move." Chanyang Zhu Yunxiao bellowed out and immediately shot into the sky. He faced off against the people of Yangji zone as he radiated with a surging presence. Yangji zone's face sank slightly. He said with some anger, "Chanyang Zhu Yunxiao, do you want to declare war on our Yangji zone?" Chanyang prefecture was founded by my son, Chanyang Zhu Yunkong. All of the direct descendants are people of our prefecture. Your Yangji zone has no right to take away a single person from Chanyang prefecture. If you insist on doing this, then so be it if we fight, Chanyang Zhu Yunxiao growled as his presence skyrocketed. Chanyang Qingyin isn't here. You're not my opponent. Chen Yangzi's voice became cold. For the sake of the winged tiger, he would not back down at all. At this moment, the surrounding space began to fluctuate violently. Numerous spatial gates appeared in the surroundings at the same time, and people in various clothes walked out in an endless stream. At this moment, all the people from the 10 protector clans of the Tianyuan continent had gathered there. Even the 6 other great elders of Chanyang prefecture had arrived with the saint rulers of their clans. The 10 protector clans had all mobilized. On one hand, they wanted to use their absolute advantage in an attempt to steal the winged tiger. On the other hand, they wanted to prevent the experts of the Beast God continent from suddenly invading the Tianyuan continent and stealing the winged tiger from them after they found the winged tiger. As a result, the 10 protector clans were no weaker than when they fended off the Beast God continent's invasion. Yun Xiao Yeyun, why are you here? An old man from the Changyang clan discovered Changyang Zhu Yin Xiao and his wife, and he immediately became slightly surprised. Changyang Zhu Yin Xiao immediately became respectful because the old man was the person with the greatest seniority in the Zhu branch. He was also his great-grandfather, Changyang Zhu Xiao. Great-grandfather, the Changyang prefecture isn't just someone with the same name. It's a clan that Kong, or founded outside. Changyang Zhu Yin Xiao explained. He knew that the protector clans had definitely received some news. If he wanted to protect the Changyang prefecture that his son had founded, he could only reveal the origins of the Changyang prefecture. What? It's a clan that Kong, or founded outside? Changyang Zhu Xiao was slightly surprised inside. He had already learned about the existence of the Changyang prefecture in Lore City before he had come, but he had only believed it to be a clan with the same name, so he did not take it to heart. Soon afterward, Changyang Zhu Xiao seemed to think of something. He immediately asked, Yun Xiao, who is that Jianqin? Great-grandfather. Jianqin's real name is Changyang Shoten. He's also a member of our Changyang prefecture, said Changyang Yun Xiao. Everyone from Changyang prefecture was surprised. Immediately, one of them could not help but whisper, Changyang Shoten is actually a member of our Changyang prefecture. Doesn't that mean that the winged tiger is following a disciple of our Changyang prefecture? The great elders of Changyang prefecture looked at each other. This piece of news was just too shocking to them. None of them had thought that the winged tiger that their protector clans had been searching for would actually be following a disciple of their clan. Chapter 807. After being stunned for a moment, the powerful great elders of Changyang prefecture all laughed out loud. They were in an extremely good mood. Back then, the 10 protector clans had already learned some information about the winged tiger from the great elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian. They all knew that the winged tiger was following by the side of a talented young man, but no one had thought that the young man would actually be from one of the 10 protector clans of Changyang prefecture. Since the winged tiger had taken the initiative to follow by the side of a disciple of Changyang prefecture, then the final ownership of the winged tiger had already become an indisputable fact. Perhaps there was no need to force a contract to be signed at all. Changyang prefecture already had custody of the winged tiger. This was because the fact that the winged tiger had taken the initiative to follow by his side and was even close to him was already equivalent to acknowledging him as his master. At this moment, the great elders of Changyang prefecture were not stupid enough to investigate who had created this Changyang prefecture, or whether it was a branch of Changyang prefecture. Such a huge pie had fallen from the sky onto their Changyang prefecture. They would not be so stupid as to throw it away. Haha, what a joke. Changyang prefecture. This story that you've made up is too funny. Apart from the Zhu, Yuan, and Qing branches of Changyang prefecture, do you have any other branches? How come we don't know about this? This Changyang prefecture in front of us clearly has the same name. It has nothing to do with the Changyang prefecture of your protector clans. Loud laughter rang out from the other side. A young man of no more than 27 or 28 years old stared at the people of Changyang prefecture with a mocking expression. That's right, and Changyang Shoten's name doesn't belong to any of your 3 branches either. A middle-aged man beside the young man mocked. The 2 of them were great elders of the Mayuan clan. Changyang Zhu Yin Xiao coldly stared at the 2 of them and snorted. This Changyang prefecture was created by my son, Changyang Zhu Yinkong. All the direct descendants of the clan possess the bloodline of Changyang prefecture, so they're obviously a part of the protector clan of Changyang prefecture. Changyang Zhu Yinkong? I seem to have heard of this person before. Is he the person who barged into the forbidden grounds of Changyang prefecture and activated the Emperor armament, almost causing the space of Changyang to collapse? According to my knowledge, that person seems to have been expelled from the clan of Changyang, so he's no longer a part of Changyang prefecture. The young man from the Mayuan clan chuckled. The faces of the people of Changyang prefecture became rather ugly. Soon after, Chanyang Qingyan immediately said, I, Chanyang Qingyan, as a great elder of Chanyang Prefecture, declare that Chanyang Ziyunkong's punishment has been lifted and that he has been accepted back into the clan. Chanyang Zhu Yunshao rejoiced and said, I, Chanyang Zhu Yunshao, declare that Chanyang Ziyunkong's punishment has been lifted and that he has been accepted back into the clan. I, Chanyang Zhu Shao, declare that Chanyang Ziyunkong's punishment has been lifted and that he has been accepted back into the clan. I, Chanyang, the great elders of Chanyang Prefecture, all lifted Chanyang Ziyunkong's punishment. The 7 of them were the people with the greatest statuses in Chanyang Prefecture. If they reached a consensus, they would be able to decide the fate of Chanyang Prefecture. Chanyang Zhu Yeyun became extremely emotional. Tears flowed from her eyes as she sobbed. Konger, do you see that? The clan has already lifted your punishment and accepted you back into the clan. We won't pursue your past mistakes. Konger, where are you? So what if Chanyang Prefecture has lifted Chanyang Ziyunkong's punishment? Does Chanyang Prefecture really want to monopolize the winged tiger so easily? Moreover, your disciple from Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang Shoten, even destroyed one of my Yangjizong sub-schools. Your Chanyang Prefecture must give me, Yangjizong, a satisfactory explanation for this matter. Master Chunyang said in a clear voice, Chanyang Qingyan, although the winged tiger is following a disciple of your Chanyang Prefecture, it's impossible for your Chanyang Prefecture to take the winged tiger as your own just because of this. Ancient divine beasts are extremely important, so the winged tiger should be raised by us protector clans together. We should turn it into a protector beast of the Tianyuan continent. It won't belong to any of us. An elegant, middle-aged man in white robes spoke. He was a great elder of the Patian sect. That's right. I agree with Ing Wujin's suggestion. The winged tiger should be raised by all of us protector clans. We can't let it become a protector beast of any one of us, said a sagely old man. He was one of the ancestors of the Heavens Incense School. Aside from the Pure Heart Pavilion, the other 9 protector clans began to debate intensely. They all wanted their own sects to obtain the rights to the winged tiger, but they could not let the winged tiger fall into the hands of any of the other protector clans. This was because once the winged tiger truly matured, it would definitely become an expert that surpassed the Holy Emperor. At that time, no one in the entire world would be its opponent. It would be able to sweep through the entire world by itself. Even wiping out the protector clans would be a piece of cake for it. As a result, the protector clans would never allow someone else to control such terrifying battle prowess so easily. Whoever controlled the winged tiger would become the ruler of the world in the future. Faced with the fierce opposition of the 8 protector clans, Chanyang Prefecture immediately felt a headache coming on. They knew that if they wanted to take the winged tiger for themselves, they would face an unprecedented amount of resistance. Suddenly, the temperature of the surroundings plummeted. An icy aura descended from the sky, instantly turning the surroundings into an extremely cold zone. Snowflakes filled the sky, blotting out the sun and suppressing the radiance of the sun. The ground of Chanyang Prefecture was covered in a layer of silver-white snow armor in an extremely short amount of time, causing all the guards and servants in Chanyang Prefecture to shiver. They stared at the sudden snowfall in the sky in shock as disbelief filled their eyes. The sudden snowfall covered an area of 100,000 kilometers. The originally hot and dry weather instantly turned cold, surprising countless people. This was because it was currently a scorching summer day. The scorching sun in the sky baked the earth like a steamer every day. Why would snow suddenly appear in such a season? The 10 protector clans gathered in Chanyang Prefecture were also stunned by the sudden snowfall. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky as light flickered in their eyes. Their gazes seemed to be able to pierce through the layers of snow and see the truth of the situation in the sky. Their expressions all became extremely solemn. This is the ice goddess hall of the Arctic. The pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion said in a deep voice as she stared at the sky solemnly. As soon as the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion finished speaking, a colossal silhouette of a divine hall slowly appeared in the hazy white sky. Whether it was its height or its length, it had already exceeded 10,000 meters. It seemed to have come from beyond the heavens. Under the respectful welcome of the snowflakes, it slowly pressed down from above with a shocking momentum. It really is the Ice Goddess Hall of the Arctic. Doesn't the Ice Goddess Hall never interfere with the matters of the Tianyuan continent? Even the great war between the three races in ancient times did not disturb them. So why has their divine hall descended here? Have they come for the winged tiger as well? A great elder of the Heavens Incense School said with a heavy voice. He was extremely stern. The huge divine hall slowly descended from the sky, pressing down on Chanyang Prefecture. With the descent of the divine hall, a huge shadow enveloped most of Lore City, causing everyone in the city to pale in fright. Various panicked cries rang out everywhere. Uncle Chang and the others were stunned by the scene in front of them. They all stared blankly at the sky. No one had recovered from their shock. The scene in front of them had already exceeded the psychological endurance of many of them. The huge divine hall stopped 1,000 meters above Chanyang Prefecture. Snowflakes danced happily around the divine hall, forming a hazy white mist that shrouded the divine hall. The divine hall seemed to fade in and out of existence, adding a veil of mystery to it. Afterward, a large group of people slowly drifted down from the divine hall under the snowflakes. They seemed like gods that had descended from the heavens. Standing at the front of this group of people was a woman in a white robe. She was in her 20s and had a devastatingly beautiful appearance. Her snow-white hair fluttered in the bone-chilling wind. Several dozen people of various ages stood behind the woman respectfully. All of them looked at the woman with respect from the bottom of their hearts. Several dozen people from the Ice Goddess Hall slowly landed on the ground of Chanyang Prefecture. The woman at the very front had tears in her eyes. She studied everything in Chanyang Prefecture with undisguised excitement. The arrival of the people from the Ice Goddess Hall obviously made them the focus of everyone's attention. In particular, the woman at the very front had attracted the attention of the 10 protector clans. Chang Bo and the other founding members of Chanyang Prefecture all looked at the woman. When Chang Bo saw the woman's appearance, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Disbelief immediately filled his eyes. This is absolutely impossible. I must have seen wrongly. Shock surged in Uncle Chang's heart. It was not just Chang Bo. Even some of the more senior guards and founding members of Chanyang Prefecture were shocked when they saw the woman's appearance. Disbelief filled their eyes. When Linglong, Yu Fengyan, and Bai Yushuang saw that woman, their pupils abruptly shrank. Soon after, they turned pale with fright and disbelief appeared in their eyes. This was especially the case for Yu Fengyan. Her delicate body began to tremble uncontrollably. 2 streams of tears flowed uncontrollably like a fountain. They flowed down her long cheeks and fell to the ground. When the cold wind blew, they turned into crystalline ice beads. Chapter 808. Yu Fengyan burst into tears. She made her way out of the crowd step by step. Her gaze towards the girl was filled with deep yearning. She said with a trembling voice, Er's name immediately caused the white-haired woman in a white dress to tremble violently. Her gaze immediately landed on Yu Fengyan, who had walked out from the crowd. She could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes. Mother! The girl cried out emotionally. She turned into a streak of white light and ran toward Yu Fengyan. She opened her arms and hugged Yu Fengyan tightly. The girl was the second young lady of the Chanyang clan, Chanyang Mingyue, who had run away from home. After several years of not seeing her, Chanyang Mingyue must have changed a lot. Although her appearance had not changed by much, her black hair had become white as snow. It was not just her hair. Even her eyebrows had become white. Her rosy skin had become snow white as well. She was very different from a normal person. You? Or is it really you? Is it really you? Yu Fengyan was extremely emotional. Her voice trembled as if she struggled to believe what she was seeing. Her daughter, who had disappeared without a trace for so many years, had actually returned. Mother, it's me. I'm Yu. I've returned to see you. Changyang Mingyue cried out painfully as she threw herself into Yu Fengyan's embrace. She had missed her mother far too much in the years she had been away. She missed her family far too much. You. My daughter has returned. My daughter has returned. My daughter has finally returned. I've missed you so much. Yu Fengyan had already choked with sobs. She had originally believed that her daughter was no longer in this world, and she had already prepared herself for the worst. But now, Changyang Mingyue's sudden return had caused Yu Fengyan's despairing heart to surge once again. The great surprise had come so suddenly that Yu Fengyan, who was completely unprepared, began to doubt whether she was dreaming or not. What was happening before her was not real. The mother and son hugged each other as if there was no one else around and cried bitterly, as if they wanted to vent all the feelings of longing that had been squeezed in their hearts all these years. The 10 protector clans and the people from the Radiant Saint Master Union hovered in the air silently. Without any exception, all of their gazes gathered on the people who had emerged from the Ice Goddess Hall and the sobbing mother and son. The light in their eyes flickered as surprise and doubt filled their faces. They all tried to guess the relationship between Changyang Mingyue and the Ice Goddess Hall, such that the Ice Goddess Hall would leave the Arctic and descend here. This was an unprecedented matter in the hearts of the 10 protector clans who had some understanding of the Ice Goddess Hall. At this moment, a space gate suddenly formed in the air. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian, walked out with a few old men. As soon as they appeared, their eyes directly locked onto the huge divine hall hovering 1,000 meters in the air. Their faces were filled with shock. This is the Arctic's Ice Goddess Hall. Why has the Ice Goddess Hall descended here? Tianjian asked with a heavy voice. He became extremely stern. As if he sensed something, he immediately looked down and saw the mother and son hugging each other. The light in his eyes immediately flickered as he became uncertain. At the same time, a white-robed, evil-looking, middle-aged man silently appeared 10,000 meters above Changyang Prefecture. He stared at the huge divine hall below in shock and murmured, "Why has the mysterious Ice Goddess Hall appeared here? Don't they never interfere with the matters of this world? Is it all because of that girl? Just who is that girl to be able to make the entire divine hall leave the Arctic and descend here?" The middle-aged man became rather stern for once. A sliver of very, very well-hidden fear even appeared in the depths of his eyes. Changyang Zuyun and Changyang Zuyunshao looked at each other. They could see the joy in each other's eyes. They could already tell that the girl who was closely connected to the Ice Goddess Hall was from Changyang Prefecture, which made them extremely happy. That way, Changyang Prefecture would be slightly connected to the mysterious Ice Goddess Hall. The 6 other great elders of Changyang Prefecture clearly realized this as well. They looked at each other, and a sliver of faint joy appeared in their eyes. On the other hand, the faces of the 8 other clans became rather ugly apart from the people from the Pure Heart Pavilion. They all cursed inside. The clan that Changyang Zuyunkong had founded was actually so extraordinary. Not only had it given birth to an unprecedented prodigy, Changyang Shodan, and even the ancient divine beast, the winged tiger, followed him by his side. It had even given birth to a girl who was related to the Ice Goddess Hall. "Your Highness, your profound ice body hasn't completely awakened, so you can't leave the divine hall for too long," an old man from the Ice Goddess Hall politely said to Changyang Mingyue at this moment. The Holy Maiden! The people from the protector clans were all surprised when they heard how the old man addressed Changyang Mingyue. Their gazes toward Changyang Mingyue immediately underwent a drastic change. Although they did not know what kind of status the holy maiden held in the Ice Goddess Hall, they did know that the old man was a terrifying holy emperor. It was unprecedented on the Tianyuan continent for a holy emperor to refer to her as the holy maiden so politely. Even a holy emperor would not be able to make a holy emperor show such respect. The people from the protector clans all looked at each other in the air. They were all extremely curious about what had just happened. They could obviously tell that Changyang Mingyue was only an earth saint master with their strength. How could such a weak existence make a holy emperor act so politely? They could not figure it out, no matter how much they thought about it. Yu Fengyan and Changyang Mingyue gradually calmed down after venting. Changyang Mingyue left her mother's embrace and wiped away her tears. She said, "Old man Zhou, it's rare for me to come home, so just let me stay outside a little longer. This place has been turned into a land of extreme cold by the Divine Hall's power, so it shouldn't affect me much if I stay here." The old man, called Elder Zhou, hesitated for a moment, then said, "Your Highness Saintess, you can only stay here for half a day at most. After half a day, this old man will bring your Highness Saintess back to the temple, even if I have to offend your Highness." "Thank you, old man Zhou." Changyang Mingyue understood her current situation, so she thanked old man Zhou. What's going on?" Yu Fengyan stared at her daughter in surprise. She was extremely puzzled by how the old man treated her daughter so politely, even referring to her as her Highness. Changyang Mingyue said, "Mother, it's a long story, and there are many things that I'm still very confused about even now. I'll tell you about the Ice Goddess Hall in detail later. Oh, right, where's father? Why don't I see him?" Yu Fengyan's face darkened when she thought of Changyang Ba. A sliver of sorrow appeared on her face, and she said, Your father is already dead." Changyang Mingyue violently trembled. She stared at Yu Fengyan in disbelief and asked in surprise, "Mother, what did you say? Father is already dead?" Yu Fengyan nodded rather sorrowfully. "It's not just your father. Your fourth aunt by Yuntian is dead as well. They were all killed by the saint rulers who hunted down your brother." Changyang Mingyue began to violently tremble. Her face immediately became sorrowful again. She said, "Mother, how's brother? Is he fine?" Your brother is fine. You probably don't know this, but he's already a saint ruler." Yu Fengyan revealed a sliver of pride as soon as she mentioned Jianqin. "What? Fourth brother is already a saint ruler?" Jianqin was shocked. Changyang Mingyue was slightly surprised inside. She could not help but smile happily, but it was soon replaced by sorrow. She turned around to look at old man Zhou and said, "Old man Zhou, I know you're resourceful. I want you to find the person who killed my father. I want to avenge him." Old man Zhou was troubled. He said, "Your Highness, my Ice Goddess Hall cannot interfere with anything on the Tianyuan continent. I really am powerless in this matter. I hope your Highness can understand my difficulties." "Old man Zhou, can't I even find the person who killed my father?" A sliver of anger appeared on Changyang Mingyue's face. Old man Zhou shook his head. His face was filled with bitterness and helplessness. "Sister, you've finally returned." At this moment, a heavy voice rang out from behind. The burly Changyang, who slowly made his way over with a faint smile on his face. Everyone in Changyang Prefecture looked over in the direction of the voice. When they saw Changyang, whose severed limbs miraculously regenerate, they were all surprised. Your legs, how did your legs?" Changyang, whose mother, Linglong, immediately cried out. The pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion seemed to sense something. She suddenly looked at Changyang, who, and a gleam of light immediately erupted from her indifferent eyes. She cried out, "This is the state of great freedom." The other experts of the Pure Heart Pavilion all looked at Changyang, who, when they heard that, they all cried out, "This really is the World Breaker realm of great freedom." The World Breaker realm is the supreme realm recorded in the Pure Heart technique and the World Breaker realm is the first realm of great freedom. The pavilion master was no longer able to remain composed. She arrived beside Changyang in a flash and asked urgently, "Are you willing to become a disciple of my pure heart pavilion?" Changyang calmly stared at the pavilion master. His expression did not change at all. He said, "You want to take me as a disciple?" The pavilion master shook her head and emotionally said, "No, I'm not taking you as a disciple. No one in the Pure Heart Pavilion has the right to take someone who has reached great freedom as a disciple. I just want you to become a disciple of the Pure Heart Pavilion and practice the Pure Heart technique. This is a path that suits you extremely well. Only by becoming a disciple of the Pure Heart Pavilion can you reach great perfection." Chapter 809. The Pavilion Master said, "Your worries are unnecessary. Your Changyang Prefecture is a branch of one of the 10 protector clans, and you've even given birth to a prodigy with unprecedented talent, Changyang Shoten. The protector clans will protect you no matter what. And right now, one of your disciples is the holy maiden of the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall. With this connection, even if the protector clans want to do anything to your Changyang Prefecture, they'll have to carefully plan for it. However, the only problem is that Changyang Shoten has disappeared with the winged tiger. If you want to protect him, there's only one way, and that's to get Changyang Shoten to hand over the winged tiger." Changyang nodded. "All right, I'll join your Pure Heart Pavilion and become your disciple. I am the Pavilion Master of the Pure Heart Pavilion, Wuchen. Your name should be Changyang, right? Changyang, although you've comprehended great freedom, you're only at the first level right now. If you want to reach the great perfection of great freedom, you need to sever everything, including family, friendship, and all your worries," the Pavilion Master said sternly. "Sever everything, including family, friendship, and all my worries." Changyang slowly closed his eyes and murmured softly. He seemed to have comprehended something. "No, you can't. You can't join the Pure Heart Pavilion. I'm your mother. You can't forget about your mother. There's also your second and third aunts, your sister Changyang Mingyue, your third brother Changyang Ku, and your fourth brother Changyang Shoten. They're all your family. How can you forget about them?" Ling Long immediately panicked when she heard that Changyang wanted to sever all his emotions. Her voice was filled with an indescribable fear. She had even temporarily forgotten about Changyang's recovered limbs. Although Ling Long had wanted Changyang to recover many times in the past, the price of doing so was severing all his emotions. Ling Long would rather Changyang remain in his former state, because she knew that once Changyang severed all his emotions, she would lose her son forever. Her son would no longer recognize her as his mother. This was an extremely painful matter. No mother would wish for their son to become like that. Changyang slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was terrifyingly calm, without the slightest ripple of emotion. He said, "Mother, don't worry. No matter what I become, you will always be my mother. And father, Changbo, second aunts, third aunts, fourth aunts, second sister, third brother, and fourth brother. I won't forget a single one of them." "Ahu! Why? Are you really going to abandon your mother?" Ling Long's face was miserable. She wept bitterly as if she had just experienced a life and death parting. 2 lines of sorrowful tears flowed from her eyes. She had already lost her husband. She did not want to lose her son as well, because he was the only pillar of support in her heart. Ling Long's grief and indignation finally caused some ripples in Changyang's heart. A sliver of emotion finally appeared in Changyang's calm gaze. He arrived before Ling Long and tightly grasped her hands with his thick palms. He said, "Mother, I won't abandon you. I went to the Pure Heart Pavilion to find my own path. Mother, I'll come back often to see you." The Pavilion Master sighed inside when she saw this. She thought, how will he reach great perfection if he doesn't completely sever all his attachments? Looks like Changyang, who still has a very long path ahead of him. Thinking up to there, the pavilion master knew that if she did not take Changyang away, the attachments in Changyang Prefecture would only grow deeper and deeper. With a wave of her hand, she enveloped Changyang, who with the gentle force of the world, and took him away. Afterward, she left through a space gate with everyone from the Pure Heart Pavilion. Only an emotionless voice rang out in the air. Changyang, whose mother, if you want your child to become a peak expert of the Tianyuan continent in the future, don't stop him. Otherwise, you'll just ruin his future for nothing. Changyang, who, and everyone from the Pure Heart Pavilion had vanished. They had all left. Ling Long stared blankly at the sky where the people from the Pure Heart Pavilion had vanished. Tears gushed out of her eyes like a fountain. Ahu! Ahu, you have to come back. Mother will always be here waiting for you to come back. You can't forget about me, Ling Long mumbled in a low voice. Ling Long murmured in a rather despondent manner. She was heartbroken, as if Changyang, who would never return once he left. This was because she knew that the next time she saw her son, he probably would not recognize her anymore. Sister, don't be sad anymore. Don't worry, Ahu is so filial. He definitely won't forget about you. I believe he'll come back to see you before long. Yu Fengyan comforted her in a hurry. The people from the protector clans hovered in the air as they silently watched all of this. None of them could remain calm. Quite a few of them looked at Changyang Zuyinshao and Changyang Zuyin with undisguised jealousy. The branch of the Changyang Prefecture was extremely impressive. They had actually given birth to 3 great geniuses, and they had developed deep ties with the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall and the Pure Heart Pavilion. In particular, the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion valued Changyang, who greatly. They even believed that Changyang, who would definitely become the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion in the future. With that, the 2 protector clans of the Changyang Prefecture and the Pure Heart Pavilion would become closely connected. It could even be said that the Changyang Prefecture had gained control of the Pure Heart Pavilion. Looks like it's impossible to control the people of the branch of the Changyang Prefecture and use them to threaten Jianshan. Whatever. Many people from the protector clans sighed inside. They politely bid farewell to the people from the Ice Goddess Hall and left with their clansmen. Very soon, all the people from the protector clans left aside from those from the Changyang Prefecture. Let's go as well. The president of the Radiant Saint Master Union gently sighed as he watched from afar. His heart had become extremely heavy. Yang Yutian's background was far more powerful than they had imagined. There were 4 siblings in total. The eldest brother had become a disciple of the Pure Heart Pavilion, while the second sister, Changyang Mingyue, had become the holy maiden of the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall. Coupled with the fact that they had the protector clan of the Changyang Prefecture behind them, any one of the 3 organizations was not something that the Union could contend against. The president of the Radiant Saint Master Union had already realized that it would be extremely difficult to retrieve the Saint artifact unless Yang Yutian agreed to it. The people from the Union all returned to the Central Union in the City of God through a space gate with dispirited expressions. Not long after, Yun Tian stepped on a white cloud and flew out of the huge castle of the Central Union Guild by himself. His gaze was extremely cold. Yang Yutian, I never thought that you would have such a great background. However, no matter how great your background is, I won't let you have an easy time. I wonder what the experts of the Beast God continent will do once they learn that the winged tiger is with you. Changyang Prefecture, Lore City. Tian Jian deeply glanced at the white-haired Changyang Mingyue before gently saying, "Let's go as well." With that, Tian Jian directly ripped open a space gate. "Grand Elder, please wait," Changyang Zuyinshao suddenly said. Tian Jian paused slightly just as he was about to enter the space gate. He turned his head and looked at the people of the Changyang Prefecture with mixed feelings. Changyang Zuyinshao hesitated before clasping his hands at Tian Jian. Senior Tianjian, do you know where Kong Er's descendant, Changyang Shoten, is? If you want to find the whereabouts of your own descendant, you people of the Changyang Prefecture should think of a way. Why are you asking me? Can't you even find a single member of a mighty protector clan? Tianjian coldly replied before directly disappearing into the space gate with the elders behind him. Suddenly, an extremely powerful mental pulse rapidly expanded from afar after Tianjian's departure. It rapidly expanded in all directions as a wave, reaching the entire Tianyuan continent very soon. Only a few supreme experts could sense the powerful mental pulse. A gleam of light immediately flashed through the eyes of the 7 great elders of the Changyang Prefecture as they sharply gazed into the distance. The other 8 clans have already worked together and used a secret technique to search the entire Tianyuan continent again. Looks like they've already excluded our Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Qingyin said with a heavy voice. So what if they've excluded us? Anyway, the winged tiger has already been obtained by a descendant of our Changyang Prefecture. We need to find that descendant as soon as possible. It's not safe for the winged tiger to remain by his side, a great elder said with a heavy voice. Changyang Zhu Yunkong and Changyang Zhu Shao frowned slightly with that, but they soon relaxed. They said nothing more. Changyang Qingyin looked at the group of people from the Ice Goddess Hall and said, "Let's go contact the people of the Ice Goddess Hall. Since a clansman of our Changyang Prefecture is the Holy Maiden of the Ice Goddess Hall, she's technically one of us." Changyang Qingyin chatted with old man Zhou for a while with a smile before bringing the matter to the Beast God continent. "It's not like you protector clans don't know the rules of our Ice Goddess Hall. Although the Holy Maiden has some connections with your Changyang Prefecture, the rules of our Ice Goddess Hall cannot be broken. Any conflict on the Tianyuan continent has nothing to do with our Ice Goddess Hall. We won't help you fend off the Beast God continent or anyone else." Old man Zhou coldly replied. He did not show any respect to Changyang Qingyin at all. Changyang Qingyin awkwardly smiled. He did not become angered at all. However, he could not help but think of the rules that had been passed down since ancient times. The first rule was to protect the Tianyuan continent and fend off invaders. The second rule was to never provoke the Ice Goddess Hall, no matter what. Changyang Mingyue only stayed in Changyang Prefecture for half a day. During that time, the huge divine hall hovered 1,000 meters above Changyang Prefecture. Snow continued to fall in a radius of 100,000 kilometers. It was extremely cold, and a thick layer of ice had already formed on the ground. Half a day later, Changyang Mingyue reluctantly bid farewell to her mother before being taken into the divine hall by old man Zhou. Afterward, the huge divine hall that hovered above Changyang Prefecture for half a day slowly rose into the air before disappearing in the end. The snow finally stopped with the disappearance of the divine hall. The scorching sun regained its luster as well, illuminating the land with its dazzling light. It gradually melted the ice and snow. After the departure of the people from the Ice Goddess Hall, the people from the Changyang Prefecture all left as well. Only Changyang Zuyun and Changyang Zhu Yunshao remained in Lore City. Chapter 810. In the sky above the South China Sea, Gentian and newbies had fused with the surrounding space. They used spatial force to fly through the air extremely quickly. The two of them had already turned into faint blurs as they silently flew through the air. "With our current speed, we should arrive at the island Senior Tianjian spoke of very soon," Gentian murmured as he flew. His voice rang out clearly in Nubis' ears. The two of them had no idea what had happened in Changyang Prefecture at all. The light of excitement flickered through Nubis' eyes. He said, "Although I have some information about the sea race in my inherited memories, the sea race must have changed drastically after so many years. The information in my memories might not be very accurate. The situation of the sea race is unknown right now, so I need to find a place to absorb the essence of that person as soon as possible. If I can absorb the essence of the Holy Emperor's fourth heavenly layer, My strength will definitely skyrocket, and my ability to stay alive will increase drastically. Once we arrive at the island, let's stop and rest for a few days if it's possible. It'll be perfect for you to absorb the essence, Gentian said with a smile. Newbies was a great help to him right now, so the stronger he was, the better. The two of them traveled for 2 hours before finally discovering a very large island. Sailboats of various sizes were docked at the pier of the island. Fishermen in simple clothes busied themselves, constantly transporting goods. The island senior, Tian Jian, spoke of should be here. Let's go take a look, Gentian said before landing on the island with newbies. The island was very large, almost half the size of the kingdom of Jessen. However, most of it was uncultivated land. There were not a lot of people living there, only a few 100,000. A huge stone tablet that was 100 meters tall was stabbed into the ground at the pier of the island. 3 words were written elegantly on it. 3 Saint Island. Gentian and newbies landed in a dense forest on 3 Saint Island before making their way to a nearby city. The city up ahead was the only city on the island. All the people on the island lived there. At this moment, the sound of hooves rang out in the distance. A group of around 100 people slowly trotted over on ordinary horses. They wore simple clothes, and their faces were peaceful. They did not give off any presence of malice at all. They were very different from the fighters on the Tianyuan continent. Liang, we plan on going out to sea for a month this time. We'll try our best to catch an even larger fish and broaden the horizons of our fellow villagers. A burly, middle-aged man at the very front chuckled aloud. He spoke boldly. Brother Wei is right. We'll definitely catch an even larger fish this time so that we can take down Lang's group, a middle-aged man in his 30s said. Beside the middle-aged man, a young man in his 30s spoke, his eyes filled with excitement. Half a month ago, Lang's group caught a 30-meter-long fish, which caused quite a commotion in 3 Saint City. It made many fishing groups envious. We'll be going out to sea for a month this time, so we have to do our best. We have to catch an even larger fish so that Lang's group can take a good look at us. We'll show them the power of our blue flag group. The group of 100 people chatted as they rode on ordinary horses. Very soon, they encountered Gentian and newbies. Their unique attire immediately attracted the attention of all the people in the group. They all studied Gentian and newbies in surprise. The blue flag group stopped 10 meters away from Gentian. The burly man at the front said to Gentian and newbies, "Hey, brothers, from your attire, you shouldn't be from 3 Saint Island, right?" Gentian and newbies both stopped and roughly studied the group. Other than the middle-aged man at the very front, who was an Earth Saint Master, the rest of them were all Saint Masters and Great Saint Masters. Gentian clasped his hands at the middle-aged man and said, "Sir, you have a good eye. The 2 of us are indeed not from this island, yet you've recognized us with a single glance. Do outsiders often come to this island?" The middle-aged man did not reject Gentian and newbies at all. He smiled boldly. "I am Zhou Wei. I am the oldest person in the blue flag group, so all the members call me Brother Wei. There are indeed outsiders who come to 3 Saint Island, but they are extremely rare. I remember that the last time someone came to 3 Saint Island was around 10 years ago. Oh, right. May I ask how I should address you two?" "I am Gentian, and the person beside me is newbies," Gentian calmly said. He did not look down on a mere Earth Saint Master just because he was a saint ruler. "It's the great newbies," Jian Chun corrected Zhou Wei. He then stared at Zhou Wei viciously. A sliver of disdain appeared in his eyes as he said, "You're just a brat, yet you dare to call me the great newbie's brother. Humph, you must be tired of living. I, the great newbies, am close to 1,000 years old now. I'm old enough to be your great-grandfather. Newbies, you better control yourself. Your temper will only cause trouble for no reason." Gentian frowned slightly and unhappily said, Humph, I'll spare them this time. Newbies gently snorted and turned his head away arrogantly. He would never allow weak people to call him by his name. Jianqin clasped his hands at the surroundings apologetically and said, "Sorry, my brother has a bad temper. Please forgive me if I've offended you in any way." It's fine. It was Zhou Wei who was rude. He forgot that all the outsiders are Heaven Saint Masters. The two of you must have come to seek guidance from our island master in hopes of breaking through to Saint Ruler. Zhou Wei seemed to understand why the outsiders had come extremely well. He pointed behind him and said, "Do you see that huge mountain range? That's the sacred land of our Three Saint Island. It's called Three Saint Mountain. The three saintesses live there." Jianqin looked at the mountain range with that before clasping his fist at Zhou Wei. He said, "Thank you for telling us. We still have matters to attend to, so we'll be taking our leave first." With that, Jianqin and newbies quickly flew toward the mountain. Very soon, Jianqin and Jianqin arrived at the top of the mountain. They did not hide their presences, so any saint ruler would be able to sense their arrival. "May I ask who has come to Three Saint Island? Please state your name." A gentle, pleasant voice rang out from above the mountain. With a flash of white light, two young women in white dresses appeared before Jianqin and newbies. They held a zither in their arms. The two women only seemed to be in their 20s. They were beautiful and devastatingly beautiful. They were extremely rare beauties in the world, enough to rival Yu, Huang Wan, and Cara Libby. However, the two women possessed an otherworldly presence, like goddesses from the heavens. They seemed slightly different from the women of the mortal world. This was definitely not something that Huang Wan or Yu possessed. Saint rulers. Jianqin was slightly surprised the moment he saw the two women. The two women before him were actually saint rulers who lived in seclusion. "I am Jianqin, and I come from the Tianyuan continent. I would like to ask your island master a few things." Jianqin clasped his hands and asked. However, his gaze paused on the zither in the two women's arms for a while. The light in his eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Our island master is currently in seclusion, so it's inconvenient for him to receive guests. Come back in a few days," one of the women gently replied. Jianqin frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Then may I ask when your island master will emerge?" "That's not something that the two of us can know. Perhaps a few days, perhaps a few months, perhaps a few years, or even a few decades," the woman continued. "It's a pity that you've come too late. If you had come 3 months earlier, you would have been able to see our island master," the other woman added. "Arg." Suddenly, a scream filled with endless pain rang out from a cave at the top of the mountain, accompanied by a series of muffled booms. Countless rocks flew out from the cave. At the same time, the formless world force in the surroundings slowly gathered towards the cave as a profound aura descended from the air. "Someone's become a saint ruler." Jianqin's eyes suddenly narrowed as he growled. Even newbies revealed a sliver of surprise. The two of them had broken through to Saint Ruler before, so they could obviously tell that this was the process of someone breaking through to Saint Ruler. Chapter 8:11. The two women no longer paid any attention to Jianqin and newbies. They directly sat in the air and placed the zither in their arms across their legs. As the jade-white strings gently and quickly moved across the zither, a beautiful melody rang out. The sound of the zither reverberated through the entire mountain. It seemed to resonate with space, causing the surrounding space to slightly distort. Even space seemed to be affected before the sound of the zither that could steal souls. It danced happily and played along with the zither. When the melodious melody reached the ears of Jianqin and newbies, they could not help but change in expression. The two of them looked at each other with a dignified expression. This was because the sound of the zither had affected their minds. The two of them felt that their emotions and their consciousness seemed to be affected by the sound of the zither. They couldn't help but become intoxicated by it. What a powerful zither melody! Jianqin was secretly surprised. This was because the two women were not playing for him. If they had been playing for him, Jianqin knew that he would not have been so easily affected. Junior sister, use the Song of Dreaming to make him fall asleep. I'll be responsible for stopping the descent of the mysteries of the world, said one of the women sternly. Although she was a saint ruler, stopping the descent of the mysteries of the world was extremely difficult. Yes, senior sister. Once I make him fall asleep, I'll immediately come and help you, said the other woman sternly. The sound of the zither suddenly changed. It became much softer. The sound of the zither contained a boundless charm that could break through all obstructions and affect a person's soul, making them drowsy. The sound of the other woman's guqin changed as well. Her jade-like fingers turned into a blur as they moved rapidly across the strings of the guqin. A murderous guqin sound filled the area, causing winds to blow and clouds to surge. Even the heavens and earth seemed to change color. Under the influence of the note filled with killing intent, the energy of the world and the invisible force of the world above the island were all affected. They all gathered from all directions under the control of the zither, forming an invisible net in the sky above the mountain in the end. The net weaved together and sealed off the entire sky, preventing the descent of the mysteries of the world. Aside from that, visible notes shot out from the zither. They shot into the mysteries of the world with lightning-like speed, with a heavy presence of killing intent in an attempt to interfere with them. The mysterious mysteries of the world slowly descended from the sky with a profound aura. When the notes with murderous intent struck the mysteries of the world, they only caused them to vibrate slightly but did not disperse. Soon, the mysteries of the world came into contact with the interwoven nets below. The nets could only slow down the descending of the mysteries of the world, but they could not stop them. The mysterious Xian Dao of heaven and earth slowly invaded the net with a mysterious aura, descending into the cave. The expression of the woman who had blocked the mysteries of the world with her zither music grew even more solemn. The melody of her 10 fingers suddenly changed, and the murderous feeling suddenly disappeared, replaced by a dull zither music. This time, the woman played the zither much more slowly. However, as each string was plucked, a heavy sound would echo through the sky. The sound was filled with an endless charm, as if it could directly shatter a person's heart. The surrounding world was greatly affected, causing the entire region to twist. Wherever the mysteries of the world descended, the space there would directly be destroyed, forming a black hole with a diameter of 3 meters. It attempted to devour the mysteries of the world with a black hole. The mysterious mysteries of the world descended from the sky after passing through all the obstructions. Even though the path ahead was very bumpy, it still advanced with firm steps. No matter how the wind, rain, and wind hit it, it was unable to stop its advance. It directly ignored the black hole formed by the destruction of space and passed through it, continuing its descent. The mysteries of the world that have descended this time are much more powerful than last time. Junior sister, hurry up and make him fall asleep. I can't hold on for much longer. The woman who stopped the mysteries of the world from descending became frantic. Soon after, her zither music became hurried once again. Visible sound waves shot out as extremely lethal sounds, shooting towards the mysteries of the world like moths to a flame. However, even with that being the case, it was unable to stop the descent of the mysteries of the world. At that moment, the mysteries of the world that slowly descended were less than 1,000 meters away from the mountain. Arg! A miserable cry that was filled with endless pain was emitted. Immediately, numerous loud noises were emitted from the distant cave, causing the entire 3 Saint Mountain to tremble slightly. Oh no! The stimulation to his mind is too great. It's very difficult for my melody to make him fall asleep. The woman's face changed as she cried out. The woman's face sank slightly when she heard that. After a moment of thought, she immediately said. There's not much time left. If he doesn't fall asleep now, he'll definitely die when the mysteries of the world descend. Use the soul-controlling song to control his mind. With that, the woman looked at Jianqin and Nubes and said, Please assist us in stopping the descent of the mysteries of the world. What's going on? Why are you stopping him from breaking through to Saint Ruler? Jianqin asked with a heavy voice. There's no time to explain it in detail right now. We can't let the mysteries of the world descend on him, or he'll definitely die, the woman said with a heavy voice. The woman said in a deep voice. However, she did not stop playing her zither at all. Sound waves visible to the naked eye turned into murderous sounds, shooting toward the mysteries of the world with great power, stopping the speed at which it was descending. Nubes crossed his arms and gently snorted. Humph, the life or death of others has nothing to do with me. I, the great Nubes, will not save the life of a mere heaven saint master, and resisting the mysteries of the world is not an easy task. Jianqin hesitated, but he did not choose to just stand by. The bean-sized chaotic Knighten in his dantian immediately spat out strands of chaotic force, filling every inch of his body. He pushed the power of the chaotic body to its limits. With a single movement, he arrived below the descending mysteries of the world and threw a punch. Jianqin's fist struck the mysteries of the world, but it actually passed through them. The mysteries of the world were formed from the laws of the world, so they were not tangible. Jianqin's punch actually failed to stop them at all. A gleam of light flickered through Jianqin's eyes. With a thought, the surrounding space immediately froze in an attempt to stop the descent of the mysteries of the world. However, to Jianqin's surprise, the mysteries of the world actually ignored the frozen space. They continued to move about as they pleased, slowly descending. What a strange thing. My attacks and the frozen space can't stop it. Looks like even using the force of the world is useless. I can only try using chaotic force now, thought Jianqin. Afterward, surging chaotic force surged out of his body, directly gathering in his hands. He suddenly pushed his hands up, and the chaotic force charged toward the mysteries of the world with a destructive presence. The chaotic force collided with the mysteries of the world. The two powers immediately came to a stalemate in the air, resisting each other. The descent of the mysteries of the world was finally slowed down. However, this did not last for very long. Jianqin's chaotic force was powerful, but it was not complete. Moreover, it lacked backup, so it only lasted for a few seconds before disappearing due to exhaustion. Without the obstruction of the chaotic force, the mysteries of the world began to descend once more. Jianqin's heart ached when he saw the strand of chaotic force he had sent out vanish so quickly. The chaotic Knighten in his dantian had become extremely small now, so he did not have much chaotic force left. Every bit he used would be depleted, making it very difficult to replenish. As the mysteries of the world drew closer and closer to the cave, Jianqin became uneasy. He hesitated over whether he should waste more chaotic force to help a stranger he had never met before. At this moment, an elegant and noble zither sound slowly rang out from the sky. The zither sound was like a divine song. Its appearance caused the entire sky to blur as clear ripples appeared. The divine song was played with the world. At that moment, the entire space seemed to have become a huge zither. The ripples that constantly appeared were the vibrations of the zither strings. As the strings constantly vibrated, the laws of the world seemed to be forcefully changed by a mysterious power, turning the space around 3 Saint Mountain into a world of its own, a domain of its own. Within this domain, the descending mysteries of the world were forcibly stopped from descending. It was as if an invisible force had forcefully restrained them in the air, preventing them from moving at all. When the 2 saint rulers heard the zither sound, they immediately beamed with joy. They both stopped playing and cried out, "Master, you finally emerged." Arg! A miserable cry rang out from the cave once again. It was filled with pain, as if it was enduring some sort of unbearable torture. "Why haven't you gone to sleep yet?" An obscure voice rang out from the empty space. The voice was filled with magic. Just a single sentence seemed to be enough to make everything in the world fall asleep. With that, the miserable cries in the cave immediately stopped. All that was heard was the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Afterward, there was nothing else. Not only did the words affect the people in the cave, but even Jianqin and newbies were greatly affected as well. Their minds immediately became hazy, and their eyelids became heavy. They were about to fall asleep. However, the two of them soon returned to their senses. They both paled in fright as their hearts churned. If even they, as saint rulers, were affected, the demonic power within the voice could no longer be described as terrifying. If they suddenly became distracted during battle, it would be an extremely fatal matter. Chapter 8:12. The melody of the zither continued. It was gentle and joyous, as if it was playing the changes of the rules of heaven and earth. It was also as if it was using a unique method to control the rules of heaven and earth, forcibly changing the rules of heaven and earth, dividing this world into another domain and creating its own rules. Jianqin and newbies became unprecedentedly stern. The two of them raised their heads to look at the azure sky as they felt extremely shocked. As saint rulers, they could obviously sense the changes in the world. Just the sound of the zither was enough to change the laws of the world. The two of them found it extremely unbelievable. The mysterious person who played the zither had studied the zither to an extremely terrifying level. The mysteries of heaven and earth descending from the sky were forcefully imprisoned in midair by the laws of heaven and earth. After a moment of rigidity, they slowly rose into the air and were forcefully sent out of this world by the laws of heaven and earth, disappearing into the azure sky. In the blink of an eye, the mysteries of the world that the three saint rulers were helpless against had been dissolved by a single zither song by the mysterious person hidden in the darkness. A woman in a purple dress slowly walked over from the distant void. The woman was tall, and her beautiful black hair cascaded down naturally. Her face was covered with a green veil, and only a pair of phoenix-like eyes could be seen. Her eyes were bright and captivating. Her slender, jade-like fingers gently stroked the strings of the zither, as delicate as mutton-fat jade. Her slender waist was incomparably soft, and as she walked, she gently swayed like a beautiful snake. The woman exuded an otherworldly aura. She was holy and pure, as if she was an otherworldly fairy. She was like a goddess who had descended from the 9 heavens. She was clearly different from ordinary women. Although it was impossible to see her appearance, it was not difficult to imagine what realm her beauty had reached. She was as if she was born from the heavens and earth. She was blessed by the heavens and was perfect in one body. A demoness. She must be a demoness, a terrifying demoness. A sliver of paleness appeared on Nubi's face. He could not help but take a small step back, standing behind Jianqin, towards this woman. He felt a fear that came from the depths of his soul. Even when facing the Holy Emperor, he rarely felt this way. It wasn't that the woman's strength was terrifying, but her existence and the divine abilities she was proficient in were definitely the bane of all demonic beasts. She used her zither to injure her enemies and control everything in the world with her zither music. Her zither music was so terrifying that it was shocking. Although those magical beasts were much stronger than human experts, their souls were their greatest weakness. "Greetings, master." Not only was she the island master of Three Saint Island, but she was also their master. Jianqin also noticed the woman in a violet dress. His eyes suddenly narrowed as he cried out, "The heavenly enchantress!" The woman in a violet dress was the heavenly enchantress that Jianqin had seen once in Mercenary City. The heavenly enchantress stood in the air with her zither in her arms. Her enchanting eyes flickered with a colorful light. She turned her head slightly and looked at Jianqin in the distance, but a gleam of light immediately flashed through her eyes. She gently said, I think I've seen you before. Are you the Jianqin who won the title of Mercenary King in the last tournament? The heavenly enchantress voice was extremely gentle, as if it was the most pleasant song in the world. However, it also possessed an enchanting charm that could make people's emotions surge. Demoness. She really is a demoness. She can steal people's souls with just a few words, Newbies cried out inside as he hid behind Jianqin. The fear in his eyes became even heavier. Just a single sentence had caused the blood in his body to flow much faster. Even his emotions were somewhat out of his control. Jianqin's emotions surged slightly with the heavenly enchantress enchanting words, but it did not affect him much with his willpower. A strange light flickered through his eyes as he stared at the veiled heavenly enchantress. He clasped his hands and said, "I am Jianqin. I never thought that Senior would still remember me. I really am honored." The heavenly enchantress stared at Jianqin for a while before gently sighing, "I never thought that you would reach Saint Ruler in just a few short years. I was just slightly lucky, reaching Saint Ruler a few days earlier. It's nothing worth mentioning. Compared to Senior, I'm like a firefly competing with the moon." Jianqin clasped his hands. The heavenly enchantress did not pay any more attention to Jianqin. She looked at her two disciples and gently said, "Shao Qian, Shao Yu, go check on him." "Yes, master." The two girls politely replied before flying into the cave at the same time. They vanished inside. Jianqin's gaze followed the two disciples. He looked at the pitch-black cave in the distance and could not help but feel curious. He asked, "Senior, may I ask who lives in the cave and why you're stopping him from reaching Saint Ruler?" The heavenly enchantress stared at the cave in the distance. Only after quite a while did she slowly reply, "He's a disciple who has been expelled from the Protector clan. Someone has placed an extremely powerful seal in his head, sealing away his talent, preventing him from reaching Saint Ruler. If the mysteries of the world descend, it will clash with the seal in his head and create a battlefield in his head. He will be heavily affected, and the final outcome will be his soul being destroyed. His soul will disperse from the world forever. Even a Class 7, Radiant Saint Master will not be able to save him. A disciple who has been expelled from the Protector clans," Jianqin murmured. He was slightly surprised, but a cold light flashed through his eyes. He could not forget that he had been forced to leave the Tianyuan continent by the Protector clans. "Senior, may I ask how much you know about the Protector clans? Can you explain it to me?" Jianqin asked. The heavenly enchantress stared at Jianqin indifferently and said, "With your current strength, you should know about this. The Protector clans are the most powerful clans on the Tianyuan continent aside from Mercenary City. They have existed for a very long time, having existed even before Mo Tianyan had appeared in ancient times. The Protector clans are divided into 4 sects, 3 clans, 2 manors, and 1 pavilion. The 4 sects are the Patian sect, Shenshao sect, Yangjizong, and Yuan sect." "Yangjizong? I never thought it really would be a Protector clan," Jianqin murmured. He could not help but think of the small sect he had destroyed in the Qiangan kingdom. The heavenly enchantress continued, "The 3 clans are the Heaven's Incense School, the Tyrant's Blade School, and the Heartless School. The remaining 2 manors and 1 pavilion are the Changyang Prefecture, the Mayuan clan, and the Pure Heart Pavilion." Changyang Prefecture. Jianqin was immediately surprised when he heard the name Changyang Prefecture. He could not help but think of the Changyang Prefecture in Lore City. However, he soon smiled in a self-deprecating manner. The Changyang Prefecture he had been born in was only a small clan in Lore City. The strongest person, Chongbo, was only a Heaven Saint Master. It was worlds apart from the Protector clans in Changyang Prefecture. Looks like it's probably someone with the same name. If the Changyang Prefecture in Lore City really was one of the Protector clans, why would the Huayin sect force them to such a state back then? Jianqin thought. However, he seemed to think of something soon after, and a gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes. Hold on. the disciple of the exiled Protector clan. Jianqin's expression changed rapidly. He immediately asked, "Senior, may I ask the name of the person who has been exiled?" "He's called Changyang Zhu Yunkong," the heavenly enchantress gently replied. "Changyang Zhu Yunkong. Is he a member of the Changyang clan? Our ancestor just happens to have disappeared for a very long time as well. Is this a coincidence, or—" Jianqin murmured. His expression changed rapidly a few times before he clasped his hands at the heavenly enchantress. He pleaded, "Senior, can I see that person?" "He's already sunk into a slumber. Don't make too much of a disturbance and wake him up, or he'll be heavily injured," the heavenly enchantress gently said. Her voice was enchanting. Jianqin did not hesitate at all after receiving permission. With a single movement, he entered the cave. The cave was filled with fist-sized luminous pearls. They shone with a gentle light, illuminating the entire cave. Jianqin continued forward for 100 meters before his vision suddenly opened up. He had already arrived in a huge cave that was several dozen meters wide. At this moment, the walls of the cave were full of cracks, and some scattered rocks were scattered on the ground. The ground was full of potholes and holes, and the scene was a mess. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu stood in the center of the cave with zither in their arms. Before them was an old man with disheveled hair and tattered clothes who looked like a beggar. He was currently unconscious. Jianqin gently made his way over. He stared at the old man on the ground. The old man was old and haggard, sleeping peacefully. "Be careful. Don't wake him up." A melodious voice sounded from behind him. A pleasant voice rang out from the side. A woman with a zither in her arms spoke to Jianqin. Jianqin stared at the old man's face. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "I want to wake him up and ask him a few things." "No. Once he wakes up, he'll stir up the mysteries of the world, and the seal in his head will be activated. He'll suffer great pain." Jianqin's suggestion was immediately rejected by the two women. "What's your relationship with Changyang Zhu Yunkong?" Suddenly, a soul-stirring voice rang out. The heavenly enchantress strode in with her zither of the demonic cry in a violet dress. Her voice was extremely calm, without any emotion at all. After a moment of thought, Jianqin said, "Senior, my real name is not Jianqin. It's Changyang Shoten. I was born in Changyang Prefecture, a small kingdom. The ancestor who founded our clan was a heaven saint master, and he just happened to be missing for a very long time. I only suspect that the old man called Changyang Zuyunkong is the ancestor of our Changyang Prefecture. I hope Senior can wake him up so that I can ask him about his identity." The heavenly enchantress hesitated before saying, "Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, play the soothing melody." "Yes, master." Without any hesitation, the two women immediately walked to one side and sat down in the air. They placed the zither on their legs and gently plucked it. A beautiful melody immediately rang out. The melody was gentle and filled with a sense of serenity. It seemed to be able to soothe a person's emotions and make them calm down. When the melody reached Jianqin's ears, Jianqin quickly calmed down from his excitement and anxiousness. His heart became peaceful. The heavenly enchantress gently stroked the strings of her zither. She plucked it gently, and with a single note, the slumbering old man immediately woke up. Chapter 8:13. The slumbering old man slowly opened his eyes. His face was haggard and filled with exhaustion. As soon as he woke up, his mind shuddered, and he could not help but draw in the mysteries of the world to break through to sainthood. However, he was immediately suppressed by the gentle sound of the zither, preventing him from drawing in the mysteries of the world. "Thank you for saving my life, Island Master. I am unable to repay your kindness." The old man looked at the heavenly enchantress with gloomy eyes as he spoke in an extremely weak voice. "It's fine. You're a pitiful person," the heavenly enchantress indifferently said. Afterward, she looked at Jianqin and said, "If you have anything to say, ask him quickly." The soothing song may be able to suppress him temporarily, but it won't last long. The gentle sound of the soothing song reached Jianshan's ears, causing him to become unprecedentedly calm. He hesitated slightly before taking out a jade pendant from his space ring and showing it to the old man. He said, "May I ask if you recognize this?" The old man's expression immediately changed when he saw the jade pendant in Jianshan's hand. He cried out, Impossible. Why would it appear here?" Jianshan became rather emotional, but he was immediately pacified by the sound of the zither. He stared at the old man closely and asked, "Do you recognize this jade pendant?" The jade pendant was a symbol of status in the Chanyang Prefecture. It was divided into many types, ranging from the direct descendants of the Chanyang Prefecture to the servants and guards hired from outside. They all possessed a jade pendant of different status. Jianshan's jade pendant was a symbol of status for the direct descendants of the Chanyang Prefecture. The old man's expression was complicated, and a trace of reminiscence appeared in his eyes. He recognized the origin of the jade pendant with a single glance, especially the ancient patterns on the jade pendant. He would never forget them because he had personally designed them all those years ago. "May I ask where you obtained this jade pendant?" the old man asked. His expression was extremely mixed. Now, Jianshan had almost confirmed his guess. He said, "My father gave it to me." A gleam of light immediately flashed through the old man's eyes. He stared at Jianshan in interest and said, "Are you from the kingdom of Jessen on the Tian-Yuan continent?" The old man's voice was slightly trembling and excited. Even the soothing divine song could not completely suppress his emotions at this moment. "That's right. I'm from the kingdom of Jessen. I'm a descendant of the Chanyang Prefecture in Lore City of the kingdom of Jessen." Jianshan was getting excited. The old man took the jade pendant from Jianshan's hand and examined it carefully. He muttered to himself, "Lore City, Chanyang Prefecture." A look of reminiscence appeared on the old man's face, and then 2 lines of muddy tears slowly flowed out. "Why? Are you the founding ancestor of our Chanyang Prefecture, the Chanyang ancestor?" Jianshan became extremely excited. "The Chanyang ancestor." The old man softly murmured before laughing in a self-deprecating manner. "The Chanyang ancestor is just a title that people call me after I founded the Chanyang Prefecture. My real name is Chanyang Zuyunkong." With that, Jianshan finally confirmed the old man's identity. He immediately dropped to his knees and said, "Descendant of the Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang Shoten, greets the ancestor." Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu immediately became very surprised when they saw this. The saint ruler Jianshan was actually a descendant of Chanyang Zuyunkong. The 2 of them were extremely surprised. A faint smile appeared on Chanyang Zuyunkong's tear-stained face. "I never thought that I would be able to see a descendant of the Chanyang Prefecture while I'm still alive. This old man can die with no regrets. Child, from the inscriptions on the jade pendant, you should be a 17th generation descendant of the Chanyang Prefecture. So you better call me great-grandfather. I don't have the right to be called ancestor." "Yes, great-grandfather," Jianshan replied. He was both excited and worried. He was excited because he had finally found the Chanyang ancestor who had disappeared for so many years, but he was worried because the Chanyang ancestor's situation seemed to be extremely bad. Someone had actually sealed him, preventing him from breaking through to sainthood for the rest of his life. "I wonder what the situation in the Chanyang Prefecture is like after so many years," Chanyang Zuyunkong said. "Don't worry, great-grandfather. Everything is fine in the Chanyang Prefecture. They've become the greatest clan in the kingdom of Jessen," Jianshan replied. "They've become the greatest clan." A relieved smile appeared on Chanyang Zuyunkong's haggard face. He continued, "So many years have passed. I wonder if Chang Wuji is still alive? Chang Bo is fine and has reached the 6th cycle of heaven, Saint Master. He's only a step away from Saint Ruler, Jianqin replied. I never thought that Chang Wuji would still be alive. Changyang Zhu Yunkong was filled with melancholy. Chang Wuji is a pitiful person that I saved outside. His talent is mediocre, so reaching the 6th cycle of Heaven's Saint Master should be his limit. It'll be very difficult for him to break through to Saint Ruler, and he has almost 1,000 years left. If he can't break through to Saint Ruler, he won't have much time left. As soon as he heard that Chang Bo was about to die, Jianqin could not help but think of Chang Bo's elderly yet loving smile. He immediately felt a strange sense of sorrow. Don't worry, great-grandfather. Chang Bo will definitely become a Saint Ruler. I hope so. Although Chang Wuji is about to die, he still has a few decades left. If he consumes a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, his lifespan will increase by a lot. Changyang Zuyunkong took out an exquisite jade box from his space ring and said, Great-grandson, this is something my mother gave me when I left the clan. There's a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource in there. Take it back to Chang Wuji. That way, he'll be able to live for another 200 years. Jianqin did not accept the jade box. He asked in concern, Great-grandfather, can you tell me what's wrong with your body? Is there really a seal in your head that prevents you from breaking through to the Saint King realm? And great-grandfather, are you really a disciple of one of the 10 protector clans of Changyang Prefecture? Jianqin seemed to have pointed out the pain in Changyang Zhu Yunkong's heart. His eyes darkened as deep sorrow filled his face. A while later, he slowly said, Great-grandson, I never thought that you would actually know about the 10 protector clans. Senior Zither, Saint must have told you. Changyang Zhu Yunkong let out a long sigh. Reminiscence filled his eyes as he murmured, That's right. Your great-grandfather really is a member of Changyang Prefecture. I'm a disciple of the Zhu, Yuan, and Qing branches of Changyang Prefecture. However, that was a very long time ago. I have nothing to do with Changyang Prefecture anymore because my ancestral home has been taken away by the clan. Great-grandfather, why has the Changyang Prefecture treated you like this? Jianqin's anger began to rise. Changyang Zuyunkong sighed. It's all because I accidentally stepped into the forbidden grounds of the clan. Back then, I didn't follow the clan's rules and entered the forbidden grounds without permission, disturbing the Emperor armament stored there. The Emperor armament went out of control and erupted with a devastating might, almost causing the space of Changyang Prefecture to collapse. It was because of this mistake that I was expelled from the clan. My ancestral home was taken away, and my name was removed from my ancestral home. The Great Elder also placed a powerful seal in my head, preventing me from breaking through to Saint Ruler for the rest of my life. If it weren't for the seal in my head, I would have broken through to Saint Ruler several hundred years ago. There would be no need for me to be reduced to such a pathetic state, Jianqin sighed. I never thought that the Changyang Prefecture of Lore City would have such a complicated relationship with the Changyang Prefecture of the 10 protector clans of the continent. I wonder if I count as a disciple of the Changyang Prefecture? Jianqin's feelings became extremely mixed. Thinking about how he was forced to leave the Tianyuan continent and seek refuge in the sea race precisely because of the pressure from the 10 protector clans. As soon as he thought about how the people who wanted to hunt him down and harm him were actually people from his own clan, he felt an inexplicable sense of sorrow. Great-grandfather was expelled from the Changyang Prefecture by the protector clan. The Changyang Prefecture of Lore City has nothing to do with the protector clans, Jianqin thought to himself. With a thought, a golden streak of light immediately shot out from between Jianqin's eyebrows. The palm-sized golden pagoda had already appeared in Jianqin's hand. Great-grandfather, I might have a way to remove the seal in your head. Don't resist. I'll take you somewhere else. With that, a white pillar of light shot out from the golden pagoda. It enveloped Changyang Zhu Yunkong and made him disappear. He had been taken into the artifact space by the power of the Saint artifact. Afterward, Jianqin was also sent into the artifact space by the white light, leaving behind the small, exquisite pagoda hovering in the air. The heavenly enchantress and the two disciples who were playing the soothing melody all stared at the golden pagoda in surprise. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. "Master, what is this? It can actually suck a living person into it. Does it have its own world inside?" Xiao Qian asked curiously and stopped playing. The heavenly enchantress' eyes rippled. She also stared at the golden pagoda curiously and gently shook her head. Clearly, she did not know the origins of the golden pagoda either. The saint artifact of the Radiant Saint Master Union had always been enveloped by dense, radiant saint force, let alone the heavenly enchantress. Even the president of the Union had only seen the saint artifact's true appearance after it had flown into Jianqin's hand. At this moment, the middle-aged man condensed from the artifact, spirit, sternly stared at Changyang Xunkong's forehead in a majestic hall within the artifact space. After quite some hesitation, he said, "Master, not only is the seal in his head powerful, it's extremely profound as well. It should have been cast down by a holy emperor at great perfection. I may be able to forcefully remove it, but if I do that, I'll create a battlefield in his head. I'll definitely injure him and wipe out his soul." Chapter 814. Artifact Spirit. Do you have any other methods to get through the seal? Jianqin felt rather worried inside. The artifact spirit lowered its head in thought for a while before shaking its head in the end. "Master, the seal in his head is extremely profound. It should have been created by the Holy Emperor. I'm unable to forcefully remove the seal without harming him with my current abilities. Unless I find a way to remove the seal, it's impossible." Jianqin frowned. He knew that the ancestor probably did not have much time left. If he could not break through to Saint Ruler, he would not have much time left. "Great-grandson, there's no need to worry about your great-grandfather. Your great-grandfather knows the seal extremely well. It's one of the 5 great seals of Changyang Prefecture. It's passed down from ancient times and was personally created by the Holy Emperor. It's extremely profound. The only way to remove the seal is to find a way to remove it," said Changyang Ziyunkong. "Great-grandfather, do you know how to remove the seal?" Jianqin asked. "Only the great elders who have grasped the seal know how to remove the seal. No one else knows about it aside from them." Changyang Ziyunkong gently sighed. "Is the only way to remove the seal to find the great elders of Changyang Prefecture?" Jianqin asked sternly. This was an extremely difficult matter. At the very least, it was basically impossible for him right now. Yes, that is indeed the case. However, this is simply impossible. Changyang Ziyunkong became sorrowful. Back then, I almost caused Changyang Prefecture to be doomed. The fact that they didn't execute me on the spot is already extremely merciful. It's impossible for the great elders to remove the seal. Ziying Qingsuo, do you have any methods to remove the seal? Jianqin asked the sword spirits for help again. They were his last hope now. "Master, the seal is profound, but we can remove it effortlessly if we were in our peak condition. However, we're still too weak right now. We're nowhere close to being able to remove the seal." Ziying's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. "Then, how long will it take for you to return to your peak condition?" Jianqin asked. After a moment of thought, Ziying said, "Master, the energy in this realm is far too weak. We'll never be able to return to our peak condition if we stay here. Even if we absorb all the energy in the crystal, we'll only be able to recover less than 1,000th of our strength. However, once we absorb all the energy in the crystal, we should be able to remove the seal without harming him." Jianqin immediately became excited when he heard that. He said, "May I ask how much longer you'll have to wait before you can absorb all the energy in the crystal?" "With our current speed, we'll need around 3,000 years to completely absorb all the energy in the crystal," Ziying said rather bitterly. "What, over 3,000 years?" Jianqin was surprised before feeling bitter inside. That was just far too long for him. Even if his great-grandfather broke through to Saint Ruler, he would only be able to live for another 2,000 years. He would not be able to wait for the sword spirits to recover. Jianqin left the artifact space with Changyang Zhu Yunkong in disappointment. He returned to the cave once again, but his heart was extremely heavy right now. He could not just watch his great-grandfather endure such painful torture until he died. Great-grandfather, consume the 10,000-year-old heavenly resource. That way, you'll be able to extend your lifespan a little. As for your seal, I'll find a way to break through it, Jianqin said rather sternly. Child, even if I eat the 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, I'll only have to endure another 100 or 200 years of pain. You better take it back to Changwuji. His talent is mediocre, so it'll be rather difficult for him to break through to Saint Ruler. He needs it more than me, said Changyang Zhu Yunkong. The heavenly enchantress watched this with mixed feelings. After hesitating slightly, she said, Actually, Changyang Zhu Yunkong still has a chance to break through to Saint Ruler. Jianqin and Changyang Zhu Yunkong's eyes immediately lit up when they heard what the heavenly enchantress had said. The flames of hope immediately lit up in their hearts. Jianqin looked at the heavenly enchantress and asked in a hurry, Senior, may I ask what method you have for my great-grandfather to break through to Saint Ruler? The heavenly enchantress slowly said, There's still some dragon saliva grass in the sea of illusory stars. It was left behind by one of the 4 great magical beast races, the dragon race. As long as you can find dragon saliva grass that's over 100,000 years old, you can temporarily suppress the seal in his head. Although you won't be able to remove the seal, you'll be able to let him reach Saint Ruler successfully and increase his lifespan by 2,000 years. The sea of illusory stars, Jianqin murmured before his eyes shone brighter and brighter. There just happened to be a material for forging the azulite swords in the sea of illusory stars, stardust. You can't. The Sea of Illusory Stars is the most dangerous place on the Tianyuan continent aside from the Death Nest. Even Saint Rulers might not be able to make it out alive if they enter, and 100,000-year-old dragon, saliva, grass, definitely grows in the depths of the Sea of Illusory Stars. The danger there is several times greater than the outskirts. I've heard from the seniors of the clan that even the Holy Emperor would struggle to return unscathed if he entered the depths of the Sea of Illusory Stars. Great-grandson, you can't go there. The Sea of Illusory Stars is not a place you can enter, Changyang Zhu Yunkong sternly said. He was a member of the 10 protector clans, so he had an extremely good understanding of the Sea of Illusory Stars. Great-grandfather, once the dragon saliva grass suppresses the seal in your head, you'll be able to successfully break through to Saint Ruler and gain 2,000 years of life. 2,000 years is more than enough. I'll definitely think of a way to get the great elder of the Changyang prefecture to remove the seal during that time, so I have to go to the Sea of Illusory Stars. There's something I want in there, Jianqin firmly said. He had to go to the Sea of Illusory Stars. No matter how dangerous it was, he did not fear it because there were materials for forging the azulite swords there. Changyang Zhu Yunkong, your great-grandson has already become a Saint Ruler. Although the Sea of Illusory Stars is rather dangerous for him, it'll be fine as long as he's careful. The heavenly enchantress' voice rang out from beside him. What, great-grandson, you've already become a Saint Ruler? Changyang Zhu Yunkong immediately became stunned. He stared at Jianqin blankly as his heart churned. Jianqin nodded slightly. Great-grandfather, you should believe that I have the strength now. I will definitely go to the Sea of Illusory Stars and find dragon saliva grass that's over 100,000 years old. Jianqin left the cave and raised his head to look at the azure sky. He exhaled deeply and slowly suppressed his surging emotions. Everything that had happened today was like a dream to him. He had never thought that he would meet the ancestor of Changyang Prefecture, who had disappeared for several hundred years on Three Saint Island. nor did he think that the ancestor who had founded the Changyang prefecture would have such a relationship with the protector clans. Newbies cautiously flew over from afar. He stared at Gentian's mixed emotions in surprise and asked, "Gentian, are you fine? Did that demoness do anything to you?" Gentian gently shook his head. He did not go into the details of what had happened in the cave. He said, "Newbies, I want to go to the Sea of Illusory Stars." The Sea of Illusory Stars. What are you going there for? That used to be Dragon Island where the Dragon clan resided, but for some reason it changed drastically and became the Sea of Illusory Stars in the end. It's extremely dangerous there, and even saint rulers can only move around the outskirts. They can't set foot in the depths. Newbies became rather stern. I must go to the Sea of Illusory Stars. No matter how dangerous it is, I must go. Gentian's gaze became unprecedentedly determined. Have you considered it carefully? 100,000-year-old dragon saliva grass can only be found in the depths of the Sea of Illusory Stars. Even saint rulers will die there. Do you really plan on going in? The heavenly enchantress' voice rang out from behind. Newbies' face immediately changed when he saw the heavenly enchantress. He instinctively took a few steps back, and his gaze toward the heavenly enchantress was filled with deep fear. Jianqin turned around and looked at the heavenly enchantress. Her bright eyes seemed to be filled with water. Her gaze was enchanting, as if she wanted to suck in a person's soul. Jianqin's heart shuddered, but Jianqin did not lose his composure due to his composure. He clasped his hands and said, "Senior, please tell me where the Sea of Illusory Stars is." The heavenly enchantress stared at Jianqin with her enchanting eyes, but Jianqin did not shrink back at all. He stared back at the heavenly enchantress and remained calm the entire time. This lasted for quite a while before the heavenly enchantress finally nodded slowly. She said, "The Sea of Illusory Stars is famed for its illusions. There will be various illusions there, and the deeper you go, the more powerful the illusions will be. You'll become lost if you're careless. You should be able to deal with regular illusions with your composure. Whatever, since you want to go, I'll go with you. The dragon saliva grass will be of great help to me, so I need it too." Jianqin was overjoyed when he heard that. Although he did not know much about the heavenly enchantress' strength, just the fact that she could change the laws of the world with her music was enough to shock him. His chances of success would greatly increase with the heavenly enchantress accompaniment. "Jianqin, I'll go with you as well. I'll be able to see just what Dragon Island used to be like," Newbies said reluctantly. The heavenly enchantress stared at Newbies and said, "Since you know that the Sea of Illusory Stars used to be Dragon Island, you should know that the place can suppress all magical beasts. At the same time, the endless illusions are the bane of all magical beasts. You'll just be going to your death if you go there. Newbies, you better stay here and increase your strength. Wait for our return," Jianqin said to Newbies. Chapter 8:15. Newbies chose to remain on Three Saint Island. He did not go to the Sea of Illusory Stars with Jianqin. Instead, he opened up a dwelling at the bottom of the sea near the island and used the power of a barrier to expel the seawater, making it his place of seclusion. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress both went to the Sea of Illusory Stars, leaving behind 2 saint rulers to watch over the island. The sky was clear. The azure sky merged with the surface of the sea, forming a beautiful picture. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress fused with the surrounding space as they hurried along using spatial force. The 2 of them had already turned into faint blurs, silently shooting through the sky without making any sound at all. "Senior, I've actually come to Three Saint Island this time under the guidance of the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Senior Tianjian. I've specially come to ask Senior about the sea race in the deep sea. May I ask how much Senior knows about the sea race? Can you tell me in detail?" Jianqin asked the heavenly enchantress secretly as he flew. A sliver of surprise flashed through the heavenly enchantress' eyes. She glanced at Jianqin and replied, "I never thought you'd actually be able to see Senior Tianjian. But why are you asking about the sea race in the deep sea? Jianchen hesitated for a while before replying. To be honest, I've actually left the Tianyuan continent this time to seek refuge. The protector clans of the Tianyuan continent want to do something to me, so I can only follow Senior Tian Jian's advice and leave the Tianyuan continent to seek refuge with the sea race. The heavenly enchantress glanced at Jianchen in surprise when she heard that. She said, "You're actually able to offend the protector clans with your mere strength as a saint ruler, and even escape the Tianyuan continent. That's just unbelievable. A few days ago, when I was in seclusion, I suddenly sensed many powerful presences on the Tianyuan continent. There were even experts from the Holy Emperor fighting in outer space. May I ask what has happened on the Tianyuan continent? Has the Beast God continent invaded?" Senior is correct. The Beast God continent has indeed invaded, but please forgive me for not being able to tell you the details. Once I leave in the future, you only need to visit the Tianyuan continent and you'll naturally understand the details, Jianchen said rather sternly. The heavenly enchantress glanced at Jianchen in surprise before looking away. She said, "Since Senior Tianjian has sent you here to learn about the sea realm, I'll tell you what I know." The heavenly enchantress paused for a while. She organized her thoughts before continuing. The sea race of the deep sea is the territory of a group of creatures that have evolved from sea creatures. They exist just like magical beasts, absorbing the energy of the world to cultivate. They can also assume human form and speak the human tongue. They also possess intelligence that is no weaker than humans. They live at the bottom of the sea, occupying a large region of the sea as their territory. The entire territory is enveloped by an extremely powerful barrier. This barrier was personally created by the sea goddess in ancient times. Even experts like the Holy Emperor cannot break through it. Not only does it keep the seawater 1,000 meters in the air, but it also protects the sea race from invaders. The existence of the barrier is basically transparent to the sea race. It won't stop them, but it's an unbreakable barrier to the Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor. Only people below the level of Holy Emperor can enter. The heavenly enchantress paused before continuing. I've been to the sea race a couple of times in the past. Although I don't have a very good understanding of the situation there, I do have a rough understanding of the general situation. Although the deep sea clans don't hate humans, they ostracize humans in their hearts. If human experts want to survive there, they have to be very careful. Once they offend the deep sea clans, it will cause a chain reaction. They will be hated and hunted down by many of the deep sea clans. The heavenly enchantress looked at Jianchen when she reached there and said, "If you've offended the protector clans of the Tianyuan continent, the sea race will indeed be a place of refuge for you. At the very least, the barrier can stop the advance of Holy Emperor experts, but it'll be rather difficult for you to survive there for long periods of time." Jianchen fell silent for a while before continuing. "Senior, may I ask how powerful the sea race is compared to the Tianyuan continent?" The sea race is very powerful. The heavenly enchantress became rather stern and said, "In ancient times, the Tianyuan continent and the beast god continent both erupted in a great war with 100 races. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and many Holy Emperor experts died there. Many of their legacies were severed as well. The several battles between the winged tiger and the war god of the Bai clan are waging through the laws of the world into chaos, making it much more difficult for people to break through to the Holy Emperor realm. As a result, there are so few Holy Emperor experts on the Tianyuan continent and the Beast God continent now. Since the sea race did not take part in the Great War in ancient times, their strength and legacies have been preserved perfectly. Although there aren't as many Holy Emperor experts as there were in ancient times, it's still not something the Tianyuan continent can compare to. It's just that since the sea race evolved from sea creatures, they're only suited to living in the sea. Cultivating in the sea realm will allow them to achieve twice the results with half the effort, but once they leave the sea realm, the results will be halved. That's why they remain in the sea realm and almost never set foot on the Tianyuan continent. That's because the sea realm is their paradise. The sea race is split into 3 territories, which are the Poseidon Hall, the Serpent God Hall, and the Heaven's Spirit Hall. These 3 halls are the 3 most powerful organizations of the sea race. According to the information I've gathered from the sea race, the Poseidon Hall is the most powerful of the 3. They have a hall elder who has reached the level of Holy Emperor. The Serpent God Hall and the Heaven's Spirit Hall each have a Holy Emperor, so there are a total of 3 Holy Emperor experts in the deep sea. 3 peerless Saint Emperors. Jianqin was shocked. The sea race was indeed extremely powerful. Just the Holy Emperor alone possessed 3 experts, which was far more than the Tianyuan continent. At the same time, he also understands that even if we don't talk about Saint Emperors, the number of Saint Kings and Saint Rulers in the deep sea is probably incomparable to the Tianyuan continent. Looks like seeking refuge with the sea race isn't an extremely safe matter. There are many sea race experts, far more than the Tianyuan continent. I need to keep a low profile once I'm there, Jianqin thought. He had finally gained a rough understanding of the situation of the sea race from the Heavenly Enchantress. It would be of great help to him when he ventured into the sea race in the future. Jianqin constantly asked the Heavenly Enchantress about the sea race along the way. He gradually gained a better understanding of the sea race. The sea was very large, several times larger than the Tianyuan continent. Even though the Sea of Illusory Stars was very close to 3 Saint Island, it still took Jianqin and the Heavenly Enchantress an entire day and night to arrive at the Sea of Illusory Stars with their speed. The Sea of Illusory Stars was a region shrouded in white mist. It was very large. Jianqin and the Heavenly Enchantress hovered 3 kilometers away as they sternly stared at the mist. The Heavenly Enchantress knew that Jianqin knew very little about the Sea of Illusory Stars, so she explained, "The true Sea of Illusory Stars is on an island in the mist. We need to pass through the mist to reach the Sea of Illusory Stars. Don't underestimate the mist. It's extremely strange. Once you enter the mist, all your senses will be suppressed and your vision will be greatly obstructed." Jianqin nodded and immediately became cautious. The Sea of Illusory Stars was only second to the Death Nest after all. Even with his strength as a saint ruler, he still needed to be extremely careful. "Let's go in. Stick close behind me and don't get separated. You might see some illusions in the mist, but remember that it's all fake. Don't believe it's real," the Heavenly Enchantress gently said. Afterward, she held the zither of the demonic cry with her left hand as she gently placed her right hand on the strings. Jianqin immediately became extremely cautious when he saw how cautious the Heavenly Enchantress was. He subconsciously moved closer to the Heavenly Enchantress, and the 2 of them flew into the mist together. As soon as he entered the mist, Jianqin immediately felt like he had stepped into a different world. Everything before him was white, and even with his vision, he could only see a distance of 3 meters. Not only was he unable to use spatial force in the mist, but even the senses of his soul were suppressed as well. He was unable to release his senses. "You'll often come across attacks in the mist, so be careful," the Heavenly Enchantress' voice rang out from beside him. Jianqin looked over and saw that the Heavenly Enchantress was less than a meter away from him. However, he was unable to make out her figure at such a short distance. All he could see was a blurry violet figure. "What is this mist? It's so strange." Jianqin was secretly surprised. Visibility was just too low in the mist, and his senses were suppressed as well. Even if there was any danger, he would not be able to discover it beforehand, which made it even more dangerous. Jianqin and the Heavenly Enchantress carefully flew forward. Neither of them moved very quickly. The light in their eyes flickered as they paid close attention to their surroundings. At this moment, a white streak of light suddenly appeared, shooting toward the Heavenly Enchantress with lightning-like speed. "Be careful!" Jianqin cried out and directly threw a punch at the white streak of light. Ding! However, the Heavenly Enchantress reacted even faster than Jianqin. She gently plucked the strings with her fingers, and a note suddenly appeared. It turned into a sound wave that collided with the white streak of light before Jianshin's punch could reach it. Chapter 816. Jianshin stared at the powder in a daze and asked, "What's that?" In that instant, Jianshin actually failed to see what the white light was. That's a type of fish that lives near the sea of illusory stars. They've mutated under the influence of the environment here. They're extremely fast, and this fish has reached the level of Class 6 magical beasts. However, it doesn't have a monster core, so even saint rulers can be injured if they're careless, the heavenly enchantress indifferently explained. Clearly, she understood the situation extremely well. Jianshin was secretly surprised when he heard that. Class 6 magical beasts were equivalent to Heaven Saint Masters, so they were like ants in the eyes of saint rulers. They could be easily crushed to death with a flick of their fingers. They posed no threat to saint rulers at all. However, saint rulers were suppressed in the mist of the sea of illusory stars. Not only were their senses reduced, but they were also unable to use spatial force. They were only able to see 3 meters away, so their strength was greatly weakened. This was a great opportunity for the Class 6 magical beasts to kill saint rulers. Jianshin and the heavenly enchantress continued forward in the mist. However, Jianshin became even more cautious after the attack from the strange fish earlier. The bean-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian spat out large amounts of chaotic force without holding back at all, spreading it throughout Jianshin's body. He had pushed the chaotic force to its limits, so even the attacks of third heavenly layer saint rulers would not be able to harm Jianshin at all. As the two of them went deeper and deeper, the strange mist became thicker and thicker. Jianshin's line of sight had already shrunk from 3 meters to 2 meters. Apart from a vast expanse of white, he could see nothing else. Jianshin's senses were suppressed in here, so he had lost even his most basic sense of direction. All he could do was slowly advance with the heavenly enchantress. The distance between them had shrunk from 1 meter to half a meter. Jianshin could even smell the faint fragrance from the heavenly enchantress, intoxicating him. "Senior, how big is this dense area? How long will it take for us to pass through it?" Jianshin turned his head and asked the heavenly enchantress. Even though they were only half a meter apart, Jianshin could only see a blurry, violet figure. "We have to travel 100 kilometers before we can get out of this thick fog. With our current speed, it will probably take us another 6 hours," the heavenly enchantress said indifferently. The light in her enchanting eyes flickered as she cautiously glanced around. At this moment, several white lights shot towards them from all directions at lightning speed. They were only discovered when they were 2 meters away from Jianshin and his companion, arriving in front of them in an instant. Jianshin remained composed. He did not care about the white lights at all. The white lights had been formed by the mutated fish at an extremely fast speed. They were only Heaven Saint Masters at most, so attacks like that were unable to harm him at all. Just as the white light was about to hit the two of them, a clear note suddenly sounded. It turned into a visible sound wave that spread out in all directions. When the sound wave came into contact with the white light formed by the jade pendant, the white light immediately turned into a pile of powder and was shattered by the sound of the zither. Jianshin's eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount when he saw this. His understanding of the heavenly enchantress strength increased by another level. Just a simple zither note from her possessed such terrifying power. No matter how many Heaven Saint Masters there were, they would not be able to block a single strum from her. Jianshin and the heavenly enchantress were constantly harassed by mutated fish. The number of attacks they faced increased from a single fish to several thousand. However, these fish were only Class 6 magical beasts, so they were unable to block the heavenly enchantress' zither music, no matter how many of them there were. Just a single sound wave was enough to pulverize hundreds or thousands of Class 6 magical beasts. The two of them flew unhurriedly in the dense fog for 2 hours. They had already crossed a distance of more than 80 kilometers and were about to enter the sea of fantasy stars through the dense fog. The deeper they ventured into the fog, the denser it became. After traveling over 80 kilometers, the fog had basically solidified. Jianchen was no longer able to see anything clearly. He could not even see his fingers in front of him. The heavenly enchantress had completely vanished as well. Only the faint fragrance from the tip of his nose served as proof of her existence. Jianchen basically used his nose to find her location. Suddenly, Jianchen felt the white fog around him churn violently. A blurry figure suddenly appeared before quickly clearing up. It was a white-robed, graceful, middle-aged woman. She stared at Jianchen with a loving smile. Jianchen stared at the woman in front of him in a daze. Disbelief filled his face as well as an indescribable pain. "Xiang'er, why have you come here? Have you come to visit your mother?" The middle-aged woman said gently. Her loving smile immediately melted Jianchen's heart that was as hard as stone. "Mother," Jianchen instinctively replied. His voice was filled with sorrow, and even his eyes had become rather red. Although the illusion had confused Jianchen's eyes, it did not confuse his mind. He knew that his mother was already dead and that her body was still in Mercenary City. She was waiting for him to revive her after he became a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. Even though that was the case, Bai Yuntian's appearance still affected Jianchen greatly. He was unable to remain indifferent no matter what. Everything you see is an illusion. Don't lose yourself in it, or your mind will fall into it, and you won't be able to break free. The heavenly enchantress' voice rang out in Jianchen's head. Her melodious voice possessed an enchanting charm. It had a calming effect, as if it could awaken people from their dreams. Jianchen's heart heaved violently. A while later, he sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He forced his gaze away from his mother as he constantly flew forward with the heavenly enchantress. "Xiang'er, what's wrong? I'm your mother. Don't you recognize your mother? Xiang'er, don't forget about your mother. You're my only child. I can't live without you." Bai Yuntian's expression suddenly became sorrowful. She let out a heart-wrenching cry. Her expression was filled with sorrow. Jianchen's heart began to violently tremble. He clenched his fists tightly. He knew that this was an illusion created by the mist. It was impossible to stop it. The only thing he could do was remain clear-headed and not fall into it. At this moment, Jianchen violently trembled. He suddenly saw his father, Changyang, flee while covered in blood to his side. A few Earth Saint Masters sneered as they chased after Changyang. "Xiang'er, save me, save me. I'm your father!" Suddenly, Changyang called out to Jianchen with a face covered in blood. His voice was extremely miserable. Jianchen began to violently tremble. Surging killing intent had already appeared in his heart. He could not help but connect Changyang's current appearance to the deaths of his parents. It was as if the 5 Earth Saint Masters had killed his parents in the same way. "This is an illusion. My parents are already dead, and I'm placing them in Mercenary City." "I'm currently in Mercenary City," Jianchen constantly muttered to himself as he forced himself to remain calm. Although he knew that this was an illusion, what he had experienced in the illusion was the greatest pain in Jianchen's heart. "Xiang'er, save me. I'm your father." Changyang called out for help once again. His voice filled with despair rang in Jianchen's ears, piercing Jianchen's heart deeply. "Ah!" A miserable cry rang out from Changyang's mouth. The people chasing after Changyang had already stopped Changyang. One of them had already pierced through Changyang's chest with a holy weapon in his hand. He was currently speaking to Changyang with a cold smile on his face. Changyang immediately collapsed in a pool of blood. His clothes were dyed red, and even the ground was dyed red. "Xiang'er, Xiang'er, save your father." Changyang looked at Jianqin with dull and lifeless eyes as he said weakly. Soon after, the light in his eyes quickly faded away, becoming hollow. In the end, he lay on the ground, motionless. Jianqin's heart violently trembled. Heavy pain filled his heart as two streams of sorrowful tears uncontrollably flowed from his eyes. Although he was a saint ruler, he placed far too much importance on his family. The tragic death of his father right in front of him had an unimaginable impact on Jianqin, making it difficult for him to maintain his composure. This was because the matter of his parents was the greatest pain in Jianqin's heart. The illusions created by the mist had deeply affected Jianqin's mind. Arg! Jianqin roared at the sky. The sound shook the sky and rang through the surroundings. With the roar, a tremendous presence and extremely dense killing intent radiated from his body. The dragon-slaying sword immediately appeared in his hand as the chaotic force within him surged into the sword, causing it to shine with a dark light. Afterward, it slashed toward the Earth Saint Masters who had killed Changyang Ba with a destructive presence. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of a zither rang out like a large bell. A powerful sound wave turned into a ripple that could be seen with the naked eye and hit the dragon-slaying sword. The powerful rebound force directly bounced the dragon-slaying sword back. Not only did the bell-like sound block Jianqin's attack, but the ripples of the sound also reached Jianqin's head. It was like a huge rock had struck Jianqin's soul, giving him a splitting headache. He could not help but cry out in pain. Humph! So much for being a saint ruler. You're already lost in a mere illusion. This is only the outermost region of the sea of illusory stars. There are even more powerful illusions in there. I really don't know how you'll deal with them. The heavenly enchantress' cold voice rang out in Jianqin's head. Chapter 817. The illusions here really are powerful, Jianqin murmured. He gradually calmed down after being affected by the illusions. It's not that the illusions are powerful, but that your mental fortitude is very poor. You've been confused by the illusions so easily. Illusions are born from the heart. If your heart is flawless and you don't care about your matters, how can mere illusions fool you? And the illusions created by the mist are already the weakest. Once you enter the sea of illusory stars, you'll encounter even more powerful illusions, the heavenly enchantress coldly said. Looks like I've overestimated you. You may be a saint ruler, but your mental fortitude is just too poor. You probably have the worst mental fortitude out of all the saint rulers on the Tianyuan continent. Perhaps coming with you to the sea of illusory stars was a mistake, the heavenly enchantress coldly said. Jianqin immediately felt bitter inside when he heard that. Although he was a saint ruler, he was just too young after all. Even if he added up his 2 lives together, it would not exceed 100 years. On the other hand, all the other saint rulers had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. Their descendants were enough to form a large clan. Jianqin completely surpassed them in terms of talent, but Jianqin would never be able to catch up to them in terms of life experience. The most severe was his relationship with his parents. Jianqin placed far too much importance on his relationship with his parents, where it was even more important than his own life. He clearly knew that the scene in the mist was an illusion, but he still fell for it uncontrollably. This was because, even though he knew it was fake, what had happened inside was still not something Jianqin could endure. If it were any other saint ruler, they definitely would not have fallen into it so easily like Jianqin. The saint rulers who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years already had many children and grandchildren. They had even personally experienced the death of their children, so they treated family with much less importance. They would not be so easily fooled by illusions. Illusions were born from the heart. As long as one had concerns and obsessions, illusions would appear in the mist according to one's mental fortitude, revealing the weakest side of one's heart before them. The illusion didn't test one's strength, but one's heart. Jianqin was decisive in killing others and had a heart that was as firm as a rock. but that was only a side of him that he revealed to his enemies. Actually, he still had a weak side to him, and that was his family. Jianshin's mental fortitude had become much more determined after what had just happened. He looked at the mist before him, and it continued to churn, constantly changing as if something was about to come out. However, Jianshin's heart immediately became as calm as water. He did not think about anything or guess anything, so naturally nothing happened. The next part of the journey was extremely peaceful. After flying slowly for over 2 hours, Jianshin and the Heavenly Enchantress finally passed through the mist. The scenery before them was no longer white. Instead, there was a layer of deep blue water. Huff! Jianshin exhaled deeply. He felt much more relaxed after passing through the mist. He looked around and saw that the surroundings and sky were all white. They were all enveloped by a dense and strange mist, as if they had formed a domain of their own. Below them was deep blue water. It was as smooth as a mirror and as still as water. It was like a pool of stagnant water, filled with an eerie feeling. And in the center, there was an incomparably huge island. This island was so large that it could no longer be called an island, but a small piece of land. On it, there were tall mountains and trees, and the entire island was covered by a layer of faint fog. It was hazy and gave off a sense of mystery. Jianshin stared at the huge island in interest and asked, "Is this the Sea of Illusory Stars?" The Heavenly Enchantress also looked at the island up ahead. She was rather stern and said, "Correct, this is the Sea of Illusory Stars. It's also the sacred land of the Dragon Clan in the past, Dragon Island. It's rumored that Dragon Island wasn't originally like this, but for some reason, something happened to Dragon Island, which resulted in the current Sea of Illusory Stars." Jianshin could not help but think back to when the Class 8 magical beasts had escaped from the artifact space in the City of God. He clearly remembered that one of the Class 8 magical beasts seemed to be a dragon. It said that the Dragon Clan is one of the 4 great clans of magical beasts. They vanished along with the Divine Phoenix Clan in ancient times. Does their disappearance have something to do with Dragon Island? Or have they all died on Dragon Island? Jianshin voiced his doubts. The Heavenly Enchantress gently shook her head. "I know very little about the matters that happened in that era. The only bit of information I have comes from hearsay and the ancient records I've read in Mercenary City. There aren't too many records about Dragon Island. All right, stop guessing. It's pointless. We've already arrived at the outskirts of the Sea of Illusory Stars. The true danger isn't the mist, but the island. We have to be careful once we set foot on the island. The 100,000-year dragon, Saliva Grass, you want should be at the center of the island." Jianshin and the Heavenly Enchantress flew toward the island at the same time. Before long, they landed on the ground. Dragon Island was covered in formations by the experts of the Dragon Clan in ancient times. These formations can absorb the energy of the world on their own. Although countless years have passed, there are still a few formations cast down by powerful experts. Even if they're not as powerful as before, you still need to be careful. The Heavenly Enchantress explained to Jianshin a few things he needed to pay attention to on Dragon Island in detail. Jianshin studied Dragon Island as he listened to the Heavenly Enchantress' explanation. Although he had passed through the mist, the senses of his soul were still suppressed by a mysterious force, preventing him from using them completely. However, his vision had become much clearer. The two of them slowly made their way forward. They were extremely careful and vigilant along the way. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook violently, for earthen walls rose from the ground, forming a prison that trapped the two of them. The earthen walls shone with a faint golden light. Vaguely, an extremely powerful and pure energy radiated from the earthen walls. Afterward, spears of earth shot out from the walls, one by one. With ear-piercing sounds, they shot toward Jianshin and the Heavenly Enchantress with lightning-like speed. The spears shot over from all directions, sealing off all paths of retreat. All that was left was a hazy white sky for the two of them to escape. Remember, Don't fly more than 10 meters into the air in the sea of illusory stars. The danger in the sky is several times greater than on the ground. The heavenly enchantress' cold voice rang out in Jianshin's head. She remained calm and composed as she faced the incoming spears. With a gentle flick of her finger, the sound of the zither suddenly rang out, expanding in all directions as a visible sound wave. The sound wave possessed unimaginable power. Wherever it passed, the earth spears in the surroundings would all collapse, turning into dust that drifted through the air. A sound wave visible to the naked eye swept out in all directions like a hot knife through butter. In the end, it ruthlessly smashed into the earthen walls that formed the prison. With a boom, the earthen walls immediately trembled violently and disintegrated. The prison could only be used against Heaven Saint Masters. It was nothing before Saint Rulers. If a Heaven Saint Master were to fall in, they would definitely die. After destroying the cage, Jianshen and the Heavenly Enchantress continued onward, making their way to the central region. The two of them encountered various attacks along the way, but they were clearly prepared for Heaven Saint Masters. They did not pose much of a threat to Saint Rulers, so they made it through without much trouble. Roar! Suddenly, the roar of a beast rang out. The ground began to gently tremble as a 300-meter-tall giant rapidly charged toward Jianshin and the Heavenly Enchantress. It constantly roared as it moved. It's a war beast. Jianshin's eyes narrowed as he softly murmured. The war beast up ahead was a Class 7 magical beast, equivalent to a human Saint Ruler. The Heavenly Enchantress coldly stared at the war beast. With a gentle flick of her finger, a sound wave immediately shot toward the war beast like an arrow. Spurt! The sound wave turned into a sharp arrow and pierced through the chest of the war behemoth. The war behemoth's extremely tough body was like a piece of tofu. A hole the size of a human head was easily punched through, but no blood flowed out. The war beast did not seem to feel any pain at all. It continued to charge toward the two of them as it roared mindlessly. The Heavenly Enchantress' expression did not change. She constantly plucked the zither with her slender fingers, producing beautiful music. Every time she played, a powerful sound wave would shoot out and strike the war beast. The war beast did not dodge at all. It continued to charge toward the two of them in a straight line. Its 300-meter-tall body had become riddled with holes from the Heavenly Enchantress sound waves. Even its head had been smashed to pieces. However, the war beast did not die even though it had lost its head. At the same time, it did not bleed, nor did it feel any pain. It continued to charge toward the two of them. Chapter 8:18. Jianshin stared at the behemoth that had lost its head and was riddled with holes. His heart was in turmoil. Jianshin found it unbelievable that the war behemoth was still alive after suffering such fatal injuries. The gentle and murderous notes of the zither constantly rang out. The Heavenly Enchantress remained calm the entire time. She constantly plucked the strings with her right hand, sending powerful sound waves at the war behemoth. The war behemoth became even more heavily injured after suffering such a dense barrage of sound waves. Its arms had been broken, and most of its chest had been shattered. Its 300-meter-tall body had shrunk to 150 meters. If other magical beasts were in such a state, they would have long been destroyed in body and soul. However, this war behemoth did not seem to have suffered the slightest bit of damage. The remaining half of its body and thick legs continued to stride over from afar. Every step it took was enough to cause mountains to crumble and the earth to tremble incessantly. Very soon, the war behemoth was less than 1,000 meters away from Jianshin and the Heavenly Enchantress. Without a doubt, Jianshin became stern. His ruler armament, Dragon Slayer, had already appeared in his hand. However, there was a tiny crack on the sword, which made the ruler armament seem imperfect. The scene before him was strange. The war behemoth seemed like an unkillable Class 7 magical beast. Jianshin struggled to remain calm, as this was the first time he had seen it. At this moment, a series of hurried notes rang out. The heavenly enchantress' right hand immediately slid across the zither, and 16 of the 36 strings were plucked in a single moment. Immediately, a series of sound waves appeared, forming visible ripples that enveloped the space in front of her. They intertwined like a spider's web, forming a net that rapidly shot toward the war behemoth. The net formed by the sound waves passed through the war beast's body without any resistance and disappeared into the distance. Soon after, the war beast's huge body collapsed, turning into meter-wide chunks of meat that fell to the ground. Its entire body had been sliced into countless pieces by the sound wave net, dying without a complete corpse. The light in Gentian's eyes flickered as he stared at the war behemoth that had been cut into countless pieces. He did not see any blood at all, which was very abnormal. "Senior, what happened?" Jianshan was filled with endless doubt as he asked the heavenly enchantress. The heavenly enchantress pondered for a while before replying. "This war behemoth has already been dead for countless years. It's only survived as a walking corpse due to certain reasons in the sea of illusory stars. However, it has no soul, no pain, and no blood. It only has an indestructible body that retains the strength of a saint ruler." "An indestructible body?" Jianshan murmured. He thought about what had happened earlier and sank into his thoughts. "It's impossible to kill the war behemoth before us, no matter what you do. Even if you cut it to pieces, it'll be able to recover before long," continued the heavenly enchantress. As if to prove what she had said, the countless chunks of flesh began to roll in the same direction as soon as she finished speaking. They reformed into the 300-meter-tall war behemoth in just a short while. It was completely unscathed, and even its head had recovered. There were no signs of injury at all. Jianshan's eyes suddenly narrowed to the size of a needle. He immediately gasped and sighed in amazement. "There's actually such a strange thing in the world. I've really learned something today." Jianshan looked at the heavenly enchantress and asked, "Senior, may I ask how we can deal with this war behemoth?" "Every time it reassembles its body, it will consume a large amount of energy and weaken slightly. There's only one way to deal with it right now, and that's to constantly shatter its body and exhaust its energy until it can no longer reform its body," said the heavenly enchantress. "Can't we avoid it?" Jianshan asked. "If we do that, it'll continue to follow you. At the same time, we don't dare to advance blindly in the sea of illusory stars, so shaking it off is impossible. Once it continues to follow you, the disturbance will draw over even more Class 7 magical beasts and saint rulers who have become like them." As she said that, the heavenly enchantress plucked the strings of her zither and continued to attack the war behemoth with sound waves. Jianshan gritted his teeth as he watched the war behemoth draw closer and closer. He charged up with his ruler armament to engage in battle with the war behemoth. With the two of them working together, the Class 7 war behemoth didn't last long before it was chopped into pieces again. However, it reassembled its body very soon. It produced a deafening roar and instinctively attacked Jianshan. The war behemoth was cut to pieces time and time again by Jianshan and the heavenly enchantress. Each time it reassembled its body, it would become much weaker. After killing it over a dozen times, the war behemoth finally ran out of energy and could no longer reform its body. Its pieces scattered on the ground. The heavenly enchantress leisurely made her way over from afar with her zither. She did not even glance at the war behemoth and said, "The Class 7 magical beasts here have already been dead for who knows how many years. They don't have any monster cores to take from their bodies. Once they absorb enough energy, they'll continue to reform their bodies. Even burning their bodies to ashes won't stop them from reviving. Let's go. We've caused far too much of a disturbance, so other Class 7 magical beasts will probably hurry over before long." Jianshan stared deeply at the countless pieces of the war behemoth's corpse. He said nothing and silently followed the heavenly enchantress into the distance. Just as the two of them traveled 10 kilometers, they immediately sensed several powerful presences appear behind them. There were magical beasts and humans among the presences, and they were all saint rulers. Soon afterward, another dozen or so weaker presences appeared behind them. They were all Class 6 magical beasts and human heaven saint masters. Jianqin looked back. Through the thin mist, he could vaguely make out a few humans and a few huge magical beasts patrolling the vicinity of the war behemoth. Jianqin knew that they were existences similar to the war behemoth. They had already been dead for who knew how many years, only leaving behind their bodies. They had become walking corpses under the influence of a mysterious power in the sea of illusory stars. They had no consciousness or soul, only acting on instinct. Conceal your presence. Don't make any disturbances that will alarm them. Although we're not afraid, it'll be troublesome if they keep pestering us. The heavenly enchantress voice rang out in Jianqin's head. Just how many Class 7 magical beasts and saint rulers are there? Jianqin asked. He was extremely stern. The Class 7 magical beasts and saint rulers that lived in the sea of illusory stars were all unkillable. They could not feel pain or fear, so it would be extremely troublesome if the two of them ended up surrounded. They might even lose their lives. The sea of illusory stars has already existed for countless years. During that time, many human experts and high-class magical beasts have entered. Some of them have died in battle for treasures, while others have died because of the sea of illusory stars. Over the years, the number of experts who have died in the sea of illusory stars has reached an extremely terrifying number. Every single person who has died will become like them. They will never die and live as long as the heavens. There are even a few saint rulers among them who were influential figures hundreds of thousands of years ago. As a result, the number of saint rulers and high-class magical beasts in the sea of illusory stars will only increase and not decrease. Probably even powerful organizations like the Protector clans and Mercenary City don't know just how many saint rulers there are in the sea of illusory stars. Other than saint rulers, there are also Holy Emperor-level experts and Class 8 magical beasts. As a result, you have to be careful when you move around here. Once you come across those walking corpses, you can't provoke them even if they're just heaven saint masters, because once you provoke them, the disturbance will draw over even more powerful experts. If you die in the sea of illusory stars, you'll become a walking corpse just like them, the heavenly enchantress said through a communication technique. Jianqin's heart became even heavier when he heard that. The sea of illusory stars really was one of the most dangerous places on the Tianyuan continent, second only to the Death Nest. Heaven Saint Masters would definitely die if they entered this place. Only saint rulers had the power to protect themselves. But even with that being the case, they still had to be careful, or they would face the danger of dying if they were careless. Suddenly, the scene in front of him changed drastically. The original island disappeared in an instant, replaced by a boundless desert. In the sky, a fiery red scorching sun emitted a terrifying heat that baked the earth, causing the temperature of the world to reach an extremely terrifying level. "Oh no, we've fallen into a formation," the heavenly enchantress said with a heavy voice as she frowned slightly. Jianqin immediately took out his ruler armament, Dragon Slayer, and vigilantly observed his surroundings. He had already adjusted himself to his peak condition and was ready for battle. He had already witnessed the terror of the sea of illusory stars, so he did not dare to be careless at all. Suddenly, the ground began to violently tremble. The place where Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress stood gradually sank. At the same time, their feet were stuck to by the flowing sand, dragging them down. "Fly," the heavenly enchantress coldly said. She plucked the strings, and a sound wave immediately struck the ground, dispersing the sand that stuck to her feet. She then immediately drifted into the air. Jianqin did not hesitate either. Chaotic force circulated wildly in his body before gathering under his feet and spurting out. The destructive energy reduced the sand to dust as he immediately rose into the air. The sand beneath their feet rapidly sank, forming a huge black hole in the end. A foul smell filled the air. Just a single breath was enough to suffocate people. Soon after, the entire desert began to tremble violently. In the end, it formed a huge monster that was over 10,000 meters long. The black hole beneath their feet was the monster's huge mouth, which was emitting a foul stench. The monster seemed like a gecko that had been enlarged countless times. It was earthy yellow and radiated with intense heat. It was completely condensed from sand. Chapter 819. Jianqin looked at the 10,000-meter-long dragon below him and became extremely stern. Chaotic force immediately surged into the ruler armament in his hand, immediately suppressing the hazy glow from the weapon. It was replaced by a ring of black light that radiated with a destructive presence. The heavenly enchantress looked at the dragon below her before looking at the terrifyingly hot sun in the sky. She said with a heavy voice, "This formation is a Saint Ruler's bane. It's a powerful killing formation, specially prepared for Saint Rulers. Once a Saint Ruler falls into it, it'll be difficult for them to escape death. Even 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers are no exception. However, the formation is no longer as powerful as it was in the past due to the corrosion of time, so it's still extremely powerful. Let's break through the formation with everything we have," Jianqin said with a heavy voice. "The true danger comes from the sky and not the dragon below. You deal with the dragon. I'll break through the formation," the heavenly enchantress said with a heavy voice. The heavenly enchantress' voice was rather stern as well. She immediately sat down in the air and placed the zither of the demonic cry on her knees. She began to play the zither with both hands, preparing to use sound to break through the formation. As the sound of the zither rang out, visible sound waves shot towards the scorching sun in the sky like lightning. The sound waves were dense, shaking the surrounding space, causing ripples to appear in the space around them. At this moment, it was as if the world had turned into an incomparably huge zither, and the ripples in the air were the zither strings that were constantly vibrating. Jianqin raised his head to look at the scorching sun in the sky. His eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount. The scorching sun in the sky was not a real sun. Instead, it was a huge calamity of death. Under his gaze, the scorching sun in the sky gradually expanded, falling towards the two of them at an extremely terrifying rate. With the descent of the sun, the temperature of the surroundings suddenly skyrocketed, as if it had become a huge oven. Even the air had evaporated. Roar! The huge dragon, completely condensed from sand below, produced a great roar. Its huge, pitch-black mouth radiated with a foul stench as it bit toward Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress. A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He stopped looking at the sun in the sky and focused on the dragon below him. Although the dragon was created by a formation, it was very powerful. It had reached the level of a Class 7 magical beast. Jianqin arrived before the dragon in a flash. He stabbed the ruler armament in his hand into the dragon's head with lightning-like speed. Destructive chaotic force immediately surged out of the sword, wildly destroying the dragon's head. As soon as the sand in the earth dragon's head came into contact with the chaotic force, it was immediately turned into powder by the destructive aura of the chaotic force. The head that was completely condensed from sand immediately loosened and turned into a large amount of powder that fell down. In the blink of an eye, a huge hole appeared in the dragon's head, as if a piece of its flesh had been forcefully cut off. However, the dragon was like a walking corpse. It felt no pain or fear. It did not feel anything at all after being injured like that. With a deep roar, a spike completely condensed from sand extended from its head, stabbing toward Jianqin with lightning-like speed. Although the spike was condensed from sand, it possessed great power. Not only was it extremely fast, but it was also extremely tough. Jianqin quickly retreated. The dragon-slaying sword stabbed out as a black streak of light, colliding with the spike. With a metallic sound, the tough spike immediately snapped, but the great force from the collision still caused Jianqin's body to violently tremble. The seemingly inconspicuous spike was equivalent to an attack from a fifth heavenly layer Saint Ruler. Swish, 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 swish. Ear-piercing whistles constantly rang out as spike after spike shot out from the dragon's body, forming a net that enveloped Jianchen. At the same time, the dragon raised its huge front claw high into the air and swung it toward Jianchen, completely sealing off the space above Jianchen. Jianchen was stern. The several hundred spikes that shot toward him were equivalent to an attack from several hundred fifth heavenly layer Saint Rulers. He was unable to block it with his current strength. With a slight movement, he left behind an afterimage where he stood. He had already crossed several hundred meters in a single moment, appearing outside the range of the spikes and the huge claw. His abilities as a Saint Ruler were suppressed here, and his senses were weakened as well. He was unable to control spatial force, so he was forced to use the illusory flash that he had not used in a long time. The illusory flash was an extremely profound movement technique, but ever since Jianchen became a Saint Ruler, he had always used spatial force to travel, so the illusory flash was not as useful to him as before. He had gradually forgotten about it. Only today did Jianchen use the illusory flash again. After dodging the several hundred spikes, Jianchen moved again. He left behind countless faint afterimages as he appeared on the dragon's huge back. The dragon-slaying sword viciously stabbed into the dragon's body with destructive chaotic force before immediately pulling it out. With a slight movement, he appeared 100 meters away and stabbed into the dragon's back again. With this cycle, Jianchen stabbed the dragon several hundred times very quickly. Every stab reduced the sand that had condensed into the dragon's body to dust, dealing great damage to it. After several hundred stabs, the dragon's body had shrunk to several hundred meters long, while the sand on the ground had piled up into hills. As Jianchen fought the dragon, the temperature in the surroundings rapidly rose. It had reached an extremely terrifying level. The scorching sun in the sky grew larger and larger. It fell from the sky, hurtling toward the two people on the ground. The heavenly enchantress sat in the air as her slender fingers slid across the zither rhythmically. Strands of sound shot out from the zither, colliding with the descending sun, causing the sky to constantly rumble. The simple and unique zither had a total of 36 strings. The heavenly enchantress had only plucked 20 of them. She had never touched the remaining 16. Jianchen raised his head to look at the huge sun descending from the sky. He became even more stern. He knew that the huge sun was the true calamity. Once it struck the ground, the world would probably be destroyed. Even Saint Rulers would have a slim chance of survival. I need to end this quickly, Jianchen thought. With a single movement, he arrived before the dragon that had shrunk to several hundred meters in size. He raised the dragon-slaying sword high in the air and poured surging chaotic force into it. He then swung it at the dragon through the air. A huge streak of light, completely condensed from chaotic force, shot out with lightning speed. It directly pierced the dragon's head, passing through its entire body and exiting from its tail. The dragon was no longer as powerful as before. It was directly cut in half by Jianchen's strike. Its huge body collapsed loudly, turning into a small hill of sand. After dealing with the earth dragon, Jianchen did not rest at all. He immediately leapt into the air and flew towards the sun while enduring the unimaginable heat. Jianchen knew that this was not the time to conserve chaotic force. The chaotic Naiden in his dantian that had shrunk once again spat out chaotic force without holding back. It all gathered on the dragon-slaying sword before shooting several strands of sword qi toward the sun. Boom! 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 Heavy booms constantly rang out in the sky. The sun that grew larger and larger began to gently tremble, but it did not slow down at all. Back off. Your power may be strange, but it's only at the 5th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler with the ruler armament. Attacks like that won't be able to break through the Saint Ruler's bane. So let me do it! The heavenly enchantress' emotionless voice rang out in Jianchen's head. Jianqin immediately felt bitter inside when he heard that. He knew that the chaotic force he possessed was extremely powerful, but it was not true chaotic force. He had only reached the first layer of the 18th layer, so his strength was equivalent to a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler. With the ruler armament, he could only unleash the strength of a fifth heavenly layer Saint Ruler. Only by reaching the 18th level could the chaotic force he possessed be considered true chaotic force. Jianqin put away the ruler armament and slowly descended from the sky. He had already made up his mind that he would do everything he could to increase his strength once he left the sea of stars. I'm already at the third heavenly layer of Saint Ruler with the first layer of the chaotic body. I wonder what level of strength I'll reach once I reach the second layer, Jianqin thought as he eagerly anticipated the outcome. The heavenly enchantress continued to concentrate on her zither. Sound waves constantly shot toward the descending sun, producing great booms. A strange energy would remain in the surroundings with every sound wave, slowly drifting around the huge sun. This was the power of the zither's sound waves. Gradually, more and more sound waves gathered around the sun, almost filling the entire sky in the end. At this moment, the heavenly enchantress stopped playing her zither. She slowly raised her head and looked at the dazzling sun in the sky. Her slender fingers gently rested on the 21st string of the zither. Ding! When the 21st string was plucked, it produced a crisp sound. The sound was extremely penetrating. It was not very loud, but it reverberated through the world. The sound wave energy that permeated the surroundings of the scorching sun immediately became violent. Soon after, it exploded with a deafening boom, causing the entire world to tremble violently. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. As for the blazing sun in the sky, it shattered into two halves amidst the sound of the explosion. Then it immediately split into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. Chapter 8:20. Jianqin exhaled deeply as he looked at the familiar landscape around him. As soon as he thought about how he had fallen into the Saint Ruler's slaughter domain, he became filled with lingering fear. The Saint Ruler's slaughter domain could kill all Saint Rulers. Even 9th heavenly layer Saint Rulers would not be able to escape death. Although the formation had become much weaker with the passage of time, it was still extremely powerful. Jianqin was unable to get through it with his attacks as a 5th heavenly layer Saint Ruler. If it were not for the fact that he was with the heavenly enchantress, Jianqin really had no idea how he would have been able to escape if he had fallen into the formation alone. Even if he did not die, he would have been heavily injured. The Sea of Stars really is terrifying. Originally, I thought that the Saint Rulers who had died here and turned into walking corpses were already very terrifying. But they're nothing compared to the formation, Jianqin thought inside. He felt extremely fearful of the formation's power. If he had come across Saint Rulers who were like walking corpses, he would have been able to flee even if he could not defeat them. After all, the walking corpses did not have any intelligence, so they were very easy to deal with. However, if he had fallen into the formation would have created a space of its own, forming a unique domain. He would not be able to escape at all. The only way was to break through the formation. And if he was not strong enough, he could only endure the destructive attacks of the formation. Perhaps because the formation had been destroyed, the ground around Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress became covered in palm-wide cracks. The cracks formed a circle, forming an extremely complicated diagram. The formation here was cast down by the experts of the Dragon Clan in the past. It's very well hidden, making it impossible to guard against. We need to be careful. Fortunately, the Saint Ruler slaughter formation we've fallen into is not as powerful as before, or it definitely wouldn't have been so easy to get through, the heavenly enchantress nonchalantly said. Jianqin nodded sternly. He feared the formation even more than the heavenly enchantress. At this moment, several powerful presences quickly flew over from afar. The Saint Rulers who had turned into walking corpses had been drawn over by the disturbance. so they all hurried over from the surroundings. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress immediately concealed their presences before silently moving forward. The saint rulers acted based on their instincts. They had no vision, so they could not see anything. They relied on unfamiliar presences and disturbances to find living things. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress moved far away from where they had been standing before. The zombies that had hurried over from the surroundings all stared at the two of them blankly. They paced back and forth unconsciously, refusing to disperse for a very long time. The two of them advanced cautiously. The heavenly enchantress discovered many traces of formations as well as a few human experts and high-class magical beasts that had become walking corpses. She avoided them from afar, so the two of them remained unscathed for the rest of their journey. In this sea of illusory stars, the two of them didn't dare to fly too fast. After half a day, the two of them had only traveled a little more than 1,000 kilometers. They were still in the outer region of the sea of illusory stars and had not even reached the central region. The hazy sky gradually darkened. The darkness of the night gradually enveloped the entire sea of illusory stars. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress were actually unable to see through the darkness in the strange sea of illusory stars, causing their vision to rapidly shrink. The heavenly enchantress held her zither with both hands. She raised her head to look at the darkened sky, and her enchanting eyes became rather stern. She said, "It's dark. It's not suitable for us to travel at night. We need to find a place to rest for the night and continue when the sun rises. I basically know nothing about the situation here, so I'll leave everything to Senior," Jianqin calmly replied. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress spent an hour to find a relatively spacious cave. The cave was 100 meters long with many twists and turns. As a result, there was no need to worry about the light leaking out. At the end of the cave, the heavenly enchantress took out a fist-sized luminous pearl from her space world and embedded it in the ceiling. It shone with a gentle light, illuminating the pitch-black cave. In the sea of fantasy stars, those walking corpses were very sensitive to any energy fluctuation and things that had never appeared in the sea of fantasy stars before. Therefore, they couldn't make a fire here because the heat wave and smoke from the bonfire would spread out of the cave and attract those walking corpses. The only way to illuminate the cave was to use the luminous pearls. After embedding the luminous pearl, the heavenly enchantress sat on the ground and slowly closed her eyes. She ignored Jianqin to one side. Jianqin also found a clean spot and sat down. He glanced at the heavenly enchantress, who always wore a veil over her face. He could not help but think of the first time he had met the heavenly enchantress. He immediately became melancholy. He could still remember the first time he had met the heavenly enchantress. It was a few years ago in the sacred land of Mercenary City. Back then he was only an insignificant Earth Saint Master, let alone Saint Rulers. Even a few Heaven Saint Masters did not treat him with any importance. Now that a few years had passed, he had grown from a puny Earth Saint Master to his current level. He stood on equal footing with Saint Rulers and even fought alongside the heavenly enchantress. This was something that Jianqin would never have dared to imagine in the past. Even when he thought about it now, he still felt like he was living in a dream. Jianqin exhaled deeply and slowly calmed himself down. He shifted his gaze away from the heavenly enchantress and cast aside all the random thoughts in his head. He began to observe the situation in his body. The bean-sized chaotic Niden in Jianqin's dantian had clearly shrunk after being drained by the Saint Ruler's slaughter formation. The chaotic force within it had become even more sparse. If such an intense battle occurred a few more times, the chaotic Niden would definitely disperse due to the depletion of chaotic force. Jianqin immediately frowned when he sensed the situation of his chaotic Niden. Chaotic force was the source of his power. If he lost it, he would only be a first heavenly layer Saint Ruler. At the same time, the abilities of Saint Rulers were suppressed in the sea of stars, so his strength would be greatly reduced. He would not be able to survive in the dangerous sea of stars. I need to replenish my chaotic force as soon as possible. I still have quite a few monster cores, so I wonder how much chaotic force I'll have if I add them all together. Jianchan thought, but if I refine chaotic force in the sea of stars, the energy that leaks out will definitely be sensed by the saint rulers who died here. I'll only be able to stay in the cave for a night, so I'll have to continue moving once the sun rises. Time is very tight, so I won't be able to make it in time. And the heavenly enchantress is beside me. If I ignore everything else and choose to refine chaotic force here, I definitely won't be able to keep the secret of the sword spirits. Looks like now's not the time to replenish my chaotic force. Jianchan became rather irritated as he thought about it. He stood up and made his way out of the cave, planning to get some fresh air. "What are you doing?" At this moment, a bell-like voice rang out from behind him. Jianchan came to a halt when he heard the voice. Looking back, he saw that the heavenly enchantress had already opened her eyes. Her limpid eyes seemed to ripple as she stared at him with an enchanting charm. Jianchan remained calm. He looked at the heavenly enchantress and said, "I'll go check on the situation outside." The heavenly enchantress slowly closed her eyes and gently said, "Remember, this is the sea of stars, not the outside world. Don't mess around here, or not only will you lose your life, but I'll also be dragged down by you. Don't worry, Senior. I know what to do. I won't joke around with my life." Jianchan gently smiled before concealing his presence. He made his way outside silently. It was pitch black outside the cave. The sky was pitch black, and not a single star could be seen. Jianchan's vision was affected in the darkness of the sea of stars. Although it was not as dark as in the dense fog, he could only see a distance of several hundred meters. The surroundings were deathly silent. There was no sound at all, as if there were no other signs of life in the sea of stars aside from him and the heavenly enchantress. Jianchan sat down on a piece of jade to the side. He did not cause any disturbances at all. He sank into his thoughts as he thought about a few things. Suddenly, Jianchan's ears twitched slightly. A gleam of light immediately flickered through his indifferent eyes. He suddenly raised his head and stared straight ahead. He became stern at that moment as well. A while later, a few pitch-black figures gradually appeared in Jianchan's field of vision. They stood on the ground and made their way toward Jianchan at the speed of ordinary people. Their movements were stiff as if they were machines. Jianchan's face drastically changed. He became extremely stern. He carefully concealed his presence and silently descended from the rock. He stared at the figures several hundred meters away and slowly backed away, directly retreating into the cave. "Oh no, they're actually coming for this cave." Jianchan was shocked. Without any hesitation, he quickly made his way to the end of the cave. He needed to tell the heavenly enchantress about this. Perhaps because she sensed Jianchan's hurried footsteps, the heavenly enchantress opened her eyes as soon as he arrived at the end of the cave. She stared at Jianchan in interest. The heavenly enchantress maintained her vigilance at all times in the sea of stars that was filled with danger. "Senior, it's bad. A few saint rulers are hurrying over to this cave," Jianchan immediately said through a communication technique. The heavenly enchantress' face suddenly changed when she heard that. She abruptly stood up and frowned. Her face became extremely stern. She could deal with a few saint rulers who had been reduced to walking corpses, but once the two sides began fighting, it would definitely cause a great disturbance. As a result, even more experts would be alarmed and rush over. At the same time, it was nighttime. The visibility in the sea of stars was far too low, and the danger was unknown. Fleeing at this time would be even more dangerous than during the day. "How far are they from the cave?" The heavenly enchantress asked through a communication technique. She was stern. "Around 500 meters, Jianchan replied as well. Neither of them dared to speak. Chapter 821. Jianchan and the heavenly enchantress knew extremely well what would happen if they encountered the walking corpses. Even if they concealed their presences, they would still be able to sense them if they were too close to the walking corpses. The two of them quickly made their way out of the cave. Their movements were completely silent and did not create any disturbances at all. When the two of them arrived at the entrance of the cave, their expressions both changed. The 7 saint rulers were already 50 meters away from the entrance. The 7 of them were emotionless. Their eyes were soulless, and their movements were stiff. They moved like machines. When Jianchen and the heavenly enchantress appeared at the entrance of the cave, the 7 saint rulers came to a halt at the same time. Immediately, tremendous presences radiated from their bodies. Energy pulsed within them, causing a storm of energy to sweep through the area. Jianchen and the heavenly enchantress' heart sank. They knew that the 7 saint rulers had sensed their existence. Without any hesitation, they immediately prepared for battle. Jianchen also pulled out his dragon-slaying sword from his space ring. Roar! The 7 saint rulers produced monstrous roars at the same time. At that moment, their bodies were no longer as stiff as before. They became much more nimble. With a few flashes, the 7 saint rulers charged toward Jianchen and the heavenly enchantress at the same time. Jianchen poured his chaotic force into the dragon-slaying sword. Wielding the sword in his right hand, he used the illusory flash. He arrived before one of the saint rulers in a single moment as a blur. The sword stabbed toward the saint ruler's chest with a destructive presence. The walking corpses showed no intention of dodging Jianchen's attack. They completely ignored Jianchen's attack and directly threw punches at Jianchen. Spurt! The dragon-slaying sword stabbed into the saint ruler's chest without any resistance. It came out from his back, but there was still no blood. The saint ruler did not even show any pain on his face. However, his fist continued toward Jianchen with a powerful force. Jianchen used the illusory flash and dodged the punch with unbelievable speed. He suddenly swung his right arm with the dragon-slaying sword, directly cutting the saint ruler's chest in half. Only the other half remained connected to his body. At this moment, another 2 saint rulers attacked Jianchen at the same time. Their attacks were extremely simple, directly using their fists. They did not use any fancy moves. Jianchen dodged their attacks with the illusory flash. The dragon-slaying sword shot through the air as a black streak of light with a destructive presence, heading toward the saint ruler, whose chest was cut in half. It directly cut the saint ruler in half. However, the saint ruler did not die. The lower half of his body quickly approached Jianchen and kicked at Jianchen. At the same time, the upper half of his body pressed against the ground and shot toward Jianchen. He clenched his hands into fists and sent them toward Jianchen with powerful force. Jianchen was emotionless. With a jolt of his right arm, the dragon-slaying sword immediately stabbed out countless times with lightning speed. The densely packed blurs seemed to form a dense net, enveloping the saint ruler who had been cut in half. Jianchen's sword was famed for its speed. In that moment, he stabbed out over 100 times with unbelievable speed. At that moment, the dense net seemed to have become a meat grinder, directly cutting the saint ruler in half into countless pieces of hard flesh. The walking corpses were saint rulers, so they retained their strength, but they had completely lost their abilities and battle experience. They did not possess saint weapons, so they could not use the mysteries of the world. They did not even possess the most basic ability to dodge or block. The only thing they knew was to use their fists to attack the intruders and kill them. As a result, the saint rulers who had been reduced to walking corpses could not be compared to when they were alive. They were easily cut to pieces by Jianchen. After dealing with the saint ruler, Jianchen immediately used the illusory flash and vanished. As soon as Jianchen vanished, 2 fists viciously struck the empty space. The powerful force caused the space to explode. Spurt! Suddenly, there was a flash of black light, and the arm of one of the 2 remaining people suddenly snapped. Jianchen had already appeared to one side like a ghost and easily severed one of the people's arms with the dragon-slaying sword. At the same time, the saint ruler that Jianqin had cut to pieces reassembled his body. He recovered to his original state and continued to charge toward Jianqin. On the other side, the heavenly enchantress engaged in a battle with the 4 remaining saint rulers. She held her zither in her left hand as she constantly plucked the strings with her slender fingers. She produced sound waves that struck the 4 saint rulers. Every time the sound waves struck them, they would leave behind a huge hole. The powerful force of the sound waves made it difficult for the 4 of them to advance. Although the heavenly enchantress walked a different path of cultivation, she was clearly much more powerful than Jianqin. Her unique sound wave attacks were extremely powerful as well, allowing her to stop the 4 saint rulers effortlessly all by herself. She forced the 4 saint rulers to retreat, preventing them from approaching the heavenly enchantress. The heavenly enchantress plucked the 20 strings in a rhythmic manner. Sound waves shot out from the zither of the demonic cry as her fingers moved. When each sound wave struck the 4 saint rulers, they would leave behind some of the power of the zither. Gradually, the power of the zither became denser and denser. When it reached a certain level, the heavenly enchantress stopped playing. She looked at Jianqin and called out, "Retreat!" Without any hesitation, Jianqin immediately abandoned his opponents and retreated to the heavenly enchantress side as a blur. The heavenly enchantress slowly placed her finger on the 21st string of the zither and plucked it gently. The 21st string produced a crisp sound and began to violently tremble. Soon after, the power of the zither suddenly became extremely violent. With a great boom, the power of the zither immediately exploded. The violent ripples of energy directly tore the 7 saint rulers to pieces. Roar! 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 The commotion caused by the fight here alarmed the experts in the distance. Immediately, dozens of beast-like roars came from all directions. The sound reverberated throughout the entire illusory star ocean in the dark night. Immediately, more than a dozen enormous auras flew over from different directions. Further away, even more enormous auras were faintly discernible. "Leave this place quickly," the heavenly enchantress growled. The heavenly enchantress growled. She was extremely stern. She had already sensed a terrifying presence, so powerful that even she feared it. It was a saint king walking corpse. Jianqin became extremely stern as well. Although their senses had been suppressed in the sea of illusory stars, they could still clearly sense the presences of saint rulers. He also discovered that at least several dozen saint rulers were currently surrounding them from all directions. Once they were trapped, the consequences would be unthinkable. They might even attract the attention of even more experts. Jianqin and the heavenly enchantress left as quickly as possible, hurrying off into the distance. However, before they could get very far, the 7 human saint rulers reassembled their bodies. They all roared out as they charged toward the 2 of them, who still had not gotten very far. A cold light flashed through the heavenly enchantress' eyes. She immediately placed the zither in front of her and was about to play it. However, with a flash, Jianqin charged toward the 7 human saint rulers with the illusory flash with the dragon-slaying sword. He called out, "I'll keep them busy. Leave quickly." The heavenly enchantress looked around. She could sense that the experts were getting closer and closer to the 2 of them. She said with a heavy voice, "It'll be very difficult for you to break free from them in an extremely short amount of time with your strength. Once you're surrounded by the walking corpses, it'll be difficult for you to escape death in the sea of illusory stars that is filled with formations." Jianqin's dragon-slaying sword stabbed through several dozen corpses in a single moment with a destructive presence. He cut one of the corpses to pieces in a single clash. He loudly said, "Don't worry about me. The abilities of saint rulers are suppressed here, so we can't use spatial force to escape. Once the 2 of us are surrounded, it'll be very difficult for you to break free. I have a profound movement technique, so even if I'm surrounded, I'll be able to keep them at bay." I'll do whatever I can to shake them off." Jianqin's words were clearly heard by the heavenly enchantress. At that moment, her gaze immediately became mixed. She stood there hesitantly and did not leave immediately. Jianqin's words had deeply touched her heart. She had never thought that on the treacherous Tianyuan continent, there would actually be someone foolish enough to risk their life to stop several dozen saint rulers, and by precious time for a stranger they had only known for a few days to escape. In such a perilous situation, even blood brothers would betray each other, let alone a stranger. Jianqin's actions immediately caused the heavenly enchantress to view him in a different light. The light in the heavenly enchantress' eyes flickered as she stood there. She had no idea whether she should abandon Jianqin and flee by herself or stay behind to fight alongside Jianqin. The powerful presences from all directions were drawing closer and closer. Jianqin could not help but panic when he saw that the heavenly enchantress still had not left. He called out, "What are you still doing here? Go. It'll be too late if you don't leave now." The heavenly enchantress stared at Jianqin with mixed feelings as he fought the saint rulers. In the end, she gritted her teeth and left, vanishing into the darkness in the blink of an eye. Chapter 8:22. After the heavenly enchantress left, Jianqin remained where he was as he engaged in an intense battle with the saint rulers. The presences in the surroundings rapidly drew closer to him. Jianqin kept the saint rulers busy all by himself, using the illusory flash to deal with them. He constantly stabbed out with the dragon-slaying sword, leaving behind vicious wounds on their bodies. However, the wounds did not affect them at all. In just a few seconds, 5 of the 7 saint rulers had been cut to pieces by Jianqin. However, they immediately reassembled their bodies and continued to fight against Jianqin valiantly. They were undying. Jianqin swung the dragon-slaying sword as a black streak of light. A huge streak of light, completely condensed from chaotic force, shot toward the 7 saint rulers, directly striking their waists and cutting them in half. The remaining sword qi struck the rocks behind them, immediately producing a loud boom and sending rocks flying in all directions. Jianqin had purposefully caused such a great disturbance to attract the attention of all the corpses and buy time for the heavenly enchantress to escape. Jianqin's actions and his tremendous presence were like a lantern in the night to the corpses. It was just so eye-catching. The corpses that hurried over from all directions all charged toward Jianqin. They had been completely distracted by Jianqin, so they did not sense the heavenly enchantress' existence at all. They did not even sense a few corpses flying over her head. Very soon, over a dozen corpses that were relatively closer arrived before Jianqin. They surrounded Jianqin and attacked him mercilessly. All of their attacks were extremely simple, always involving punches and kicks. They had completely forgotten about the battle techniques they knew when they were still alive, or it would have been impossible for Jianqin to stop over 20 opponents of the same level with his current strength. Jianqin was stern. He moved through the gaps between the attacks of over 20 corpses as a series of blurs. Even though he was surrounded, he still moved about with ease. At this moment, the illusory flash of 1,000 shadows that he had mastered played a huge role. More and more corpses rushed over from all directions. In just a few breaths of time, the number of Saint Ruler corpses attacking Jianqin had increased from 20 to 50. Jianqin's constantly flickering figure gradually moved into the distance, attracting a group of corpses in the opposite direction from the heavenly enchantress. He caused quite a disturbance along the way just to attract the attention of all the corpses and prevent them from sensing the heavenly enchantress' presence. At this moment, the violet-robed heavenly enchantress stood several kilometers away. She stared in Jianqin's direction with an extremely mixed expression. She could clearly hear the sounds of battle up ahead before gradually fading away. The corpses chased after Jianqin further and further away, leaving the region in the end. "I hope you can come back alive," the heavenly enchantress softly murmured before quickly moving off into the distance with her zither. gradually disappearing into the darkness. Jianqin had already been surrounded. The number of saint ruler corpses attacking him had increased to 100. Most of them were humans, while a small portion were magical beasts. They all roared out like wild beasts as they constantly threw punches at Jianqin. Jianqin had completely turned into a blur. Even though he had been surrounded by 100 saint ruler corpses, he was not injured at all. The illusory flash of a saint ruler was an extremely profound movement technique. It might not be able to compare to saint rulers who had grasped spatial force, but no movement technique in the world could compare to it when it came to dodging. As a result, the several hundred saint ruler corpses did not even manage to touch the corner of Jianqin's clothes after so long. Jianqin fled with the group of corpses. He constantly dodged their attacks along the way and did not injure them at all. The corpses were unkillable existences. With his current strength and what little chaotic force he had left, it was basically impossible for him to kill all the corpses to the point where they could not reform their bodies. At the same time, the longer the battle dragged on, the more corpses would gather in the surroundings. It would only make the situation more and more dangerous for him. Jianqin only wanted to shake off all the corpses right now. He had no intention of fighting them at all. Bang, 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 bang. The corpses constantly threw punches at the rapidly moving Jianqin, but their fists all landed on the blurs left behind by Jianqin's illusory flash without any exception. However, a portion of their fists passed through the blurs left behind by Jianqin and landed on their comrades. They immediately produced a series of muffled sounds and were blown far away by the powerful force. Roar! At this moment, an earth-shaking roar rang out in the distance. A presence that was countless times more terrifying than the saint ruler corpses rapidly approached Jianqin from afar. The surging energy actually caused the mist above the sea of illusions to churn violently. It was extremely terrifying. A sliver of shock immediately flashed through Jianqin's eyes. His heart became extremely heavy as he cried out, "Oh no, it must be a supreme expert at the level of the Holy Emperor!" Without any hesitation, Jianqin immediately fled as quickly as he could into the distance. Behind him, over 100 saint ruler corpses pursued. The Holy Emperor corpse flew over at a low altitude from afar with a surging presence. It moved extremely quickly. Even though it was only flying, it was already as fast as a saint ruler using spatial force. In just a few seconds, it arrived above Jianqin and directly swung a palm at Jianqin. A terrifying energy whistled toward Jianqin. Although the Holy Emperor corpse's palm strike did not contain any abilities, the great power of the Holy Emperor still shocked Jianqin. Jianqin's heart was extremely heavy, but he did not become flustered at all. This was not the first time he had faced a Holy Emperor, and although the Holy Emperor corpse before him possessed terrifying strength, it was completely incomparable to when he was alive. This was because he could not use spatial confinement to stop him from dodging, so he could only use a single attack. Jianqin pushed the illusory flash to the limit. He immediately turned into a blur as he shot to the side with unbelievable speed. The terrifying energy from the Holy Emperor corpse's palm strike basically brushed past Jianqin and landed on the ground, allowing Jianqin to dodge it by a hair's breadth. Boom! With a violent rumble, it basically rang through the entire sea of stars. The Holy Emperor corpse's palm strike caused the ground to violently tremble. The ground in a radius of several dozen kilometers cracked, forming a thick, spiderweb-like crack. At the same time, the violent ripples of energy surged out in all directions as a shockwave. Jianqin, who was closest to it, was immediately pushed back. He was unable to control himself, and his clothes had been reduced to tatters, revealing the golden silk armor woven from the primordial god silk. The difference between a holy emperor and a saint ruler was just far too great. Not only did the palm strike from the holy emperor send Jianqin flying, but it also sent over 100 saint ruler corpses flying. Not only did the palm strike send all the saint rulers flying, but the shockwave of energy had also destroyed many hidden formations, causing many complicated and profound diagrams to appear in the cracked ground. Jianqin only landed on the ground in horrible shape after flying several kilometers away from the powerful energy. He immediately climbed to his feet in shock. Ignoring his tattered clothes, he immediately used the illusory flash to flee into the distance. At this moment, another tremendous wave of energy attacked him from behind. Without any hesitation, Jianqin immediately used the illusory flash to the limit. He left behind an afterimage as he appeared 20 meters away in a single moment. With another boom, the ground shook once again. Jianqin was blown away by the violent shockwave of energy again. As he flew backwards, Jianqin quickly regained control of his body and used the force of the impact to flee even faster into the distance. He knew that as long as he put some distance between himself and the corpses and carefully concealed his presence, it was possible for them to not discover him. However, things did not go as Jianqin wished. With an ear-piercing sound, the Holy Emperor corpse caught up to him from behind several times faster than Jianqin. It arrived before Jianqin in the blink of an eye and blocked his path. It threw a powerful punch at Jianqin. The punch did not possess any abilities, but the great force caused the space around it to twist violently. Jianqin's face changed drastically. At this moment, he was in the air and had nowhere to borrow power from. He was unable to use the advantage of the illusory flash to its full potential. Moreover, he had used all of his strength to flee, so he had no strength to dodge the punch. Jianqin gritted his teeth. Chaotic force immediately filled his body, pushing the advantage of the chaotic body to the limit. The Dragon Slayer sword in his right hand stabbed at the incoming fist of the Holy Emperor corpse. The Dragon Slayer sword stabbed deeply into the fist of the Holy Emperor corpse with destructive chaotic force. It then pierced through the entire right arm of the Holy Emperor corpse. The sharp tip of the sword pierced through his shoulder. At the same time, the punch of the Holy Emperor corpse landed on Jianqin's chest. Jianqin's golden armor immediately shone with a hazy golden light to block the punch. Although the armor could block the attacks of saint rulers, it was still powerless against the attack of the Holy Emperor. The golden light was quickly suppressed by the fist, and it landed heavily on Jianqin's chest in the end. Chapter 8:23. Jianqin was blown far away like a cannonball. He flew higher and higher as blood spurted from his mouth. He was heavily injured. Very soon, Jianqin's body broke through 10 meters in the air. At this moment, the surrounding space began to distort violently. Within the distorted space, Jianqin felt intense pain all over his body, as if countless sharp blades were cutting at his body. Jianqin immediately thought back to the heavenly enchantress warning that they could not fly more than 10 meters in the air. At the same time, he thought back to the altitude at which the saint ruler corpses flew. They all flew at low altitudes, never surpassing the 10-meter limit. Oh no, danger! Jianqin was alarmed. He ignored his wounds and controlled his body with all his might. He then used the illusory flash and immediately shot 10 meters away in a blur. Just as Jianqin began to descend, the space 10 meters in the air suddenly shattered, turning into darkness. Spatial cracks crisscrossed within, as if pitch-black blades were constantly slicing at something. Blood dripped from the corner of Jianqin's mouth. He stared at the space above in a daze as the light in his eyes began to flicker. At this moment, a saint ruler corpse flew over from afar and directly threw a punch at Jianqin. A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. With a slight sway, he dodged the punch. When he reappeared, he was behind the corpse. He grabbed the corpse with both hands and threw it 10 meters into the air. Jianqin possessed the chaotic body, so his physical strength was extremely great. The corpse was thrown 100 meters into the air by Jianqin. Immediately, the space around the corpse began to distort violently. The space there rapidly turned dark as countless pitch-black spatial cracks crisscrossed together. They pierced through the corpse like sharp blades, cutting it into pieces. Jianchen paid close attention to the changes in the sky. He saw that the corpse did not fall down after being cut into pieces. Instead, it was sucked into the pitch-black spatial cracks and vanished. A gleam of light immediately flashed through Jianchen's eyes. The undying bodies of the Saint Ruler corpses had always been a headache for him. But at this moment, he finally found a way to completely kill them. Up ahead, the only Holy Emperor corpse charged toward Jianchen once again. It struck out with a palm strike, sending a surging wave of energy toward Jianchen. Although Jianchen was heavily injured, the strength of his chaotic body was perfectly demonstrated at this moment. Not only did he suppress his wounds, but they also rapidly healed, so they did not affect him too much. Jianchen understood just how powerful the Holy Emperor corpse was, so he avoided the Holy Emperor corpse. He dodged the Holy Emperor corpse's attacks as hard as he could. He did not dare to take them on head-on. However, Jianchen rejoiced over the fact that although the corpses were powerful, they did not possess any intelligence or battle techniques. Otherwise, let alone a Holy Emperor, just a 7th heavenly layer Saint Ruler would be enough to make him lose his ability to flee. This was because 7th heavenly layer Saint Rulers only needed to free space to completely restrict his movements. The Saint Ruler corpses in the surroundings surrounded him once again. This time, Jianchen directly put away his dragon-slaying sword. He dodged the attacks of the Holy Emperor corpse as he dealt with the Saint Ruler corpses. Whenever he had the opportunity, he would strike out mercilessly and send the Saint Ruler corpses flying. Bang! 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 The sounds of bodies colliding constantly rang out. Jianchen weaved between the corpses of over 100 Saint Ruler corpses and constantly threw punches. He knocked the corpses 10 meters into the air one after another before ripping them to pieces by the crisscrossing spatial cracks. Their limbs were sucked into the spatial cracks as well, going to who knows where. As the Saint Ruler corpses were ripped to pieces by Jianchen, the number of Saint Ruler corpses attacking Jianchen rapidly decreased. Very soon, there were only around 50 corpses. During this time, a few Saint Ruler corpses in the surroundings were disturbed by the disturbance, and all flew over. However, Jianchen had already found a way to deal with the Saint Ruler corpses, so he no longer feared them. What he truly feared was the powerful Saint Ruler corpses that had reached the level of the Holy Emperor. The Holy Emperor corpse constantly attacked Jianchen. It did not differentiate between friend and foe at all. Many Saint Ruler corpses died to its hands, but they would immediately reassemble. It was an unkillable existence. Jianchen could only dodge the fierce attacks of the Holy Emperor corpse. He focused on dealing with the Saint Ruler corpses. The battle lasted for an hour. Finally, all the Saint Ruler corpses were sent 10 meters into the air by Jianchen. They died to the spatial cracks, and only the Holy Emperor corpse remained. The arduous battle of an hour was extremely taxing on Jianchen. He completely used his chaotic force to cast the illusory flash. He never stopped, causing his small chaotic Naiden to shrink a few more times. It was now the size of a bean while the remaining chaotic force decreased. Jianchen looked at the remaining Holy Emperor corpse and thought, I need to deal with this problem as soon as possible. If this drags on and I run out of chaotic force, not only will I not be able to push the defenses of the chaotic body to its limits, but I'll also lose my source of power. I won't even be able to use the illusory flash. Jianchen dodged the Holy Emperor corpse's attack and arrived beside it like a ghost with a series of afterimages. He directly threw a punch at the Holy Emperor corpse's crotch in an attempt to send it 10 meters into the air. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Holy Emperor corpse immediately trembled. It was not sent into the air by Jianchen's punch like the other Saint Ruler corpses. It only rose half a meter before stopping. Its hand had already struck Jianchen's left shoulder with lightning-like speed. Crack! The sound of bones breaking rang out clearly. The bones in Jianshan's left shoulder had been shattered by the Holy Emperor Corpse's palm. He could not feel his left arm at all. Jianshan could not help but groan from the intense pain. Large droplets of sweat immediately covered his forehead, but he did not retreat at all. He endured the pain in his shoulder and arrived behind the Holy Emperor Corpse. He also threw a punch at the Holy Emperor Corpse's crotch, causing it to rise another half a meter. The Holy Emperor Corpse did not have any intelligence. It did not understand Jianshan's intentions at all. The only thought in its mind was to destroy all outsiders. There was nothing else. It immediately turned around and threw a punch at Jianshan, just like before. Jianshan had already anticipated this. Just as the Holy Emperor Corpse raised its hand, he flashed behind it and threw another punch at the same spot, causing the Holy Emperor Corpse's body to rise another half a meter. This scene repeated over and over again. After more than 10 punches, Jianshan finally threw the Holy Emperor Corpse 10 meters into the air. The calm space in the sky immediately began to distort violently. Pitch-black spatial cracks appeared once again, crisscrossing and crushing the Saint King Corpse's head to pieces. Having lost its head, the Holy Emperor Corpse did not feel anything. The headless corpse repeated its previous actions and kept attacking Jianshan. Jianshan threw another punch at the Holy Emperor Corpse's crotch, causing its entire upper body to rise 10 meters into the air. Suddenly, the upper body of the Holy Emperor Corpse was smashed into pieces in the space cracks. Even its arms disappeared, leaving only its legs below the waist. A gleam of light flashed through Jianshan's eyes. With a deep bellow, he threw out another punch, sending the corpse 10 meters into the air. The Holy Emperor Corpse's limbs were also completely submerged in the air. Suddenly, the pitch-black space cracks appeared again like sharp blades and cut the legs of the Holy Emperor Corpse into pieces. They were then sucked into the space cracks and disappeared. Over 100 Holy King Corpses and 1 Holy Emperor Corpse were finally buried in the air under Jianshan's efforts. Jianshan stared tiredly at the pitch-black sky and let out a long sigh. Soon after, he slowly landed back on the ground, his entire body lying powerlessly on the ground as he gasped for breath. Jianshan felt extremely exhausted after fighting the Holy King Corpses for so long. It had been a very long time since he had felt so tired. I was able to survive the attacks of over 100 Holy King Corpses and 1 Holy Emperor Corpse, all because of the illusory flash. It saved me. Looks like I need to spend more effort on studying the illusory flash in the future. If I end up in a strange place that can suppress the abilities of Holy Kings again, I'll be able to survive with the illusory flash, Jianshan thought. His experience in the Sea of Stars had allowed him to truly understand the power of the illusory flash. He began to truly value the movement technique that he had neglected for so long. Jianshan rested on the ground for a short while before standing up again. He concealed his presence and carefully left the place. Although he knew that all the Holy King Corpses in the surroundings had probably been drawn over, the battle was just far too intense. He still did not dare to stay for long, afraid that there would be quite a few corpses hurrying over from even further away. The night in the Sea of Illusory Stars was different from the outside world. With Jianshan's strength, he could completely ignore the night outside, but that was not the case in the Sea of Illusory Stars. He could only see things a few hundred meters away, and they were all blurry and unclear. As a result, Jianshan did not dare to walk blindly in the night. He stopped after just 10 kilometers, planning to continue during the day. That way, he would be able to discover many unknown dangers ahead of time. At this moment, Jianshan sat on the ground as he controlled the chaotic force within him to circulate, increasing the rate at which he recovered. After spending a full 2 hours, the injuries in his body were finally healed. If it were any other saint ruler or even holy emperor, it would have been impossible for them to recover from Jianshan's injuries in such a short amount of time. They would have needed several days at the very least to make a full recovery. If it were a saint ruler who had received an attack from a holy emperor, it it would have taken an even longer time. It would have taken them over a dozen days, or even a few months, or even several decades. Only Jianshin's chaotic body could recover so quickly. It was much faster than Radiant Saint Force.